Hello everyone, long time no see. We are casting the freshest season of GSL, which, man, it started really quickly after the finale of the last season. Or maybe time, just a concept and I'm totally out of whack. But yeah, I'm getting back into things. But this is GSL as usual, which means that we got it from Patreon, patreon.com/GSL. And if you would like to support these players, as well as the Korean StarCraft scene, that is a great place to do so. In the bottom right, we do have the reigning champion, 6-time GSL, or is it 7 times now? I don't know. In the bottom right, it is Maru. And in the top left, we do have TY, who is a GSL champion himself, although that was a little while ago. And a little while ago, when he was capable of winning a GSL, he was often the only player who could go toe-to-toe with Maru. Although back then, I suppose you would kind of call it the opposite way around, perhaps, which is that maybe Maru was the only guy that could go toe-to-toe with TY in TVT. TY was particularly good at it, but, I mean, they both were very, very, very close in skill, as depicted, actually, in the finals that they played together. And it was super, super, super close. But that's a while back. TY went to military. TY has come back. He wanted to do both Brood War and StarCraft 2, which was a really cool idea because he's also one of the few players who was really, really good in Brood War and really, really good in StarCraft 2. So to have someone try and do both was kind of an interesting concept. Understandably, a very difficult one, though, as well. And he's kind of given up on that. He actually even said before qualifying, I believe, for this GSL that he was basically retiring. Like, he wasn't really looking into doing it for much longer. But then I guess he qualified because, you know, why not try? And so he is here. And I have no doubt that he's done a lot of work and practice to prepare for this. And as far as TVT goes, unless something has drastically changed in the last couple of weeks that I haven't been casting, it is again one of those matchups that's core has remained the same over the last decade, which is that strategy and tactics are really highlighted in the mid to late game of this game. And then the early game is potentially very cutthroat, but that actually has been the case for a while at this point. Little Reaper action, but clearly TY wanted to play a defensive role, so his Reaper was ready. But nonetheless, despite being defensively minded, Maru still managed to trade out basically perfectly evenly, which with him going for his own command center on the low ground as well, means that there's not much to talk about, actually. They both went for the faster command center. We do have, however, Maru really changing things up. No second gas, already able to add a third CC. Now, his factory is only on the way as well, so keep that in mind. TY's factory production already started up, but it looks like a second Reaper joined up with the first, and I missed it completely. Killed TY's Reaper, and also delayed the command center. So he was already a little ahead of the natural command center, I believe. Maru, that is, like a second. So now he's a few seconds ahead, and of course with a third CC. As third CC it is greedy. This is a fact. You can call it greedy, but then there's that weird timing that can happen in StarCraft with, I would say, often depicted by a Terran's third CC in any matchup, which is that, I guess in general greed, right? But Terrans can do it easier because we can lift our buildings, right? But there's this thing that can happen, whereas if you're greedy fast enough, then the opponent's middle-of-the-road strategy, which is probably the most often strategy used, something middle of the road, isn't actually going to punish it. So if it doesn't punish it, then it's going to have a tough time catching up to it. Not impossible, of course, but that is kind of the trick to this. So especially if the guy not doing a fast 3CC never gets a scout, which is kind of likely, actually, with the way that the openers can work out. They don't necessarily get that dive into the main command center, see a third CC, then yeah, there's really nothing they can do about it. So in this particular game, we actually had both players going for Hellion openers, which is actually kind of a throwback. Not too surprised to see TY do it, because he's kind of that player, also more like to do mech than Maru, but still a little surprising. I don't know if this is the meta now, but as we see here, Maru is not winning it. He did come in with 2 less Hellions. TY not only produced more in general. Oh no, they both lost 2. Okay, never mind. Yeah, so no, he didn't actually produce more, but he did produce a little bit faster, and obviously had defender's advantage, so. He does have a tank already on the way. Maru actually swapped over to go for Cyclone, so otherwise their builds were very, very close together, besides that third CC. And any aggression that Maru tried did not work out. But Maru's not the one that has to apply aggression. So keep that in mind. Even though it looks like he was just pushed back totally easily and everything was a failure, these Hellions don't matter. I mean, even if this was 2cc versus 2cc, a Hellion opener, unless it does find that SCV damage, it's like, I lost a couple of Hellions, but I'll probably be able to survive behind this because defense advantage, and we're not at a mass amount of units, and not particularly good units either, because the other guy also went Hellions. So there's a lot of safety, I would guess, provided everything goes smoothly. I mean, I don't know how safe a Hellion opener is against someone who goes immediately into tanks. It was like an early tank push, that type of thing. It actually was a meta for a while, these Hellion openers in TVT. But last I cast, we had a lot of medevac drops. And a medevac drop would have at least seen that was a fast 3cc. Maybe it doesn't do any damage. Maybe it's actually out of position to deal with the Hellions. But it at least would have seen it. Now, TY doesn't exactly know what's going on, but he is thinking that he can get away with the 3rd CC on location, and since he is clearly so defensively minded, as well as going into mech, by the way, I mean, that makes sense. Oceanborn, also a map that really sets up nicely for this. He has gone into tanks, as I was saying, quicker than his opponents, which he does not know, but he is willing to find out. We actually had Maru going into not just 2 Cyclones, but 4, actually, which means that his tank count is actually non-existent. Interesting choice from Maru, but we got this little scuffle going on, so it's a little more important. Raven's trying to throw down auto turrets every which way, but we did see some of the range of the auto turret cast be a problem right there. You know, they kind of like bumped into each other and were like, ah, Jesus. And then they had to kind of micro those turrets, those Ravens, away from any Cyclone shots, which was very close to killing one of TY's Ravens, or just actually running Ravens over anything that shoots up. I guess Maru didn't really have so much of a problem there. The Vikings, obviously. Anyways, so the auto turret only has a 1 cast range. It's actually really obnoxious. You throw it down, you micro the Raven away. You realize it never threw down the auto turret. Not to overanalyze that particular battle, because that was not the battle that Maru wanted. That's the more important thing. So Maru is apparently playing into that assumption that mech is on the way. He did scout it, my bad, so he saw a second factory, so he knew this, but it's kind of felt like he was doing it anyway before that factory was seen. The Cyclones can get that map control and can actually stop a push like this, or at least, you know, halt it, and I didn't really do that. So much more important is that TY still has his tank, still has his auto turrets, and is pushing into Maru's 3rd base. It's not going to win the game, and it's actually not going to kill nearly as many SCVs as I thought it was. Wow. I saw a heavy amount of tanks trying to shoot down this bio, but the concave was good enough. The SCVs were pulled in a really good fashion, and the anti-armor missile was on TY's units, but it's always a little funny seeing that on armored, you know, mech units, I guess. Just because, well, it is effective. You know, it's less armor. There's no reason not to do it, but I just figured the tanks would at least be able to fight back a little bit more than they did. Apparently not. Now, these Marines and Marauders are not very healthy, but again, using their positioning just make those tanks look so ineffective. And I didn't even really get to talk about what I wanted to talk about in this game, because it ended way too soon. Maru, almost bopping this, actually. So, I mean, he gets the Cyclones. He doesn't really win the fight here, but he kind of gets to stall it out a little bit. He knows that it's on the way. He's been producing Marauders for a while, and like I pointed out, it basically just not gone for tanks, which seems like a really questionable thing to do in TVT, because tanks are such a staple of the matchup in all 14 years of TVT. It's always been there. But what he did instead is get really fast into the barracks production. Plus, he had that 3rd CC so fast that he was already gaining some money from that. And he was able to get that amount of units. You know, slightly worse units than mech units, but even the Marauders being a little bit better, he was able to get a decent amount of them and actually get that concave, which was really important. And though the anti-armor missile sometimes looks a little comical against like a 30 tank mech army, you're like, well, you really, is that going to really help your bio kill that? It obviously did help those Marauders chunk through the tanks. And the Ravens as well was well controlled and all that good stuff. But TY, maybe regretting actually pushing out, because he was on a 3cc setup with a 4th CC on the way. And perhaps he could have played this as a turtle instead of trying to attack. So, yeah, it's game 1 already done. About 8 minutes, Maru tears TY apart. Let's see if TY can fight back. All right, so now we go on to Alcyone. The top Reddit is Maru, and in the bottom left, we do have TY. So TY tries to go for a mech build and tries to go for, kind of an aggressive one, you know? Obviously prioritizing that second factory over what can be seen as like a more typical production setup, which is kind of like the 1-1-1. So 1-1-1, 3cc, then 2 extra factories, so 3 factories, and then pretty quickly into 5 factories after. But then instead, going for that second factory pretty quick, had a good number of tanks early on. And if they maybe had been placed defensively with missile turrets and spotters and air control properly positioned, maybe TY is still playing out that game in a pretty good position for a mech player. But he wanted to try and get a push in, and, you know, sometimes those pushes are actually really, really devastating. Like, Maru handled it in a way that made it look like it was a silly thought, which is still kind of amazing to me. I really thought those tanks were going to at least get a couple of shots on those SCVs and make it more of like a, 20 SCVs killed, can TY hold on, having dealt that economic damage, but nope. Anyway, but that push can be really devastating, because if the opponent doesn't know it's on the way, doesn't even have any idea, lets the tanks get up close and personal without any type of halting or preparation for it, that's bad news. Even if they know it's on the way, sometimes handling tank Viking positioning can be very difficult. If you don't have a surplus of units, if you can't get a good concave, if you've lost your ravens, so you don't have anything else to help out, like matrices or auto turrets in well-positioned places, then suddenly you just don't have the appropriate setup to kill tanks that are already sieged up, probably abusing a choke. But in that case, everything worked out really well for Maru. And TY is going to have to try something else. He might still do mech, but he has lost one of the finest high ground, like 3cc setups. Oh, the place's command center off a little bit. So that's kind of sucky, but he can do mech on Alcyone as well. And if he does, then I certainly would say that it would be defensively minded for the entirety of the game. He was clearly more on the defense, as once again with the Reaper, for instance, or his Hellion positioning, but then obviously was the one to do a tank push. Probably wouldn't do that this time around. TY, I don't think ever actually knew his opponent went for a super fast 3rd CC. His first scout on it was when he pushed into it. And at that point, his own 3rd CC was finished just because it was built on location. So yeah, I don't think he actually knew that's what Maru's build was. And typically in these tournaments, they at the very least get rid of build order. So oftentimes they're supposed to put on no match history. Obviously, you can go through the replay if you're given enough time, though, but that's the question, is if you are given that time to do so. So I don't know if TY actually figured it out, is what I'm trying to say. And then if TY did, let's just say that he did, and now is more wary about Maru doing it again, well, he should be, because Maru is doing it again. And then the question is, can he get that scout to get the confirmation to perhaps pair up with a build that he thinks could be very good against it? But he still have to get that confirmation, And that's probably not going to happen, although the high ground is not walled off, so I'm actually wrong about that. He would definitely get the scout. Kills the Reaper, kills the SCVs. TY chasing down an overly aggressive Maru. Maru, I guess, was hoping that this would have been a less quick first Hellion. Perhaps he would have done the swap onto the reactor first and foremost, and then been building the Hellions, and that little time delay would have meant that the Hellions didn't find the damage that they did. And they did find damage, but they didn't actually see the 3rd CC timing. They saw the starport timing. That starport's really quite late. All you got to do is compare it to your own starport timing. You're both doing a 1-1-1. Why is his so late? Probably because the 3rd CC was fitting there. Probably. Maybe that's a second starport, and it's actually like a 2-starport big brain move, which would be pretty cool, but it's not. So we got tanks once again on the menu. Actually, no, this time from Maru, he's going right into the tanks. So we got not even Alien. Went Cyclone, very safe defensive unit against whatever TY is planning, and TY is planning Banshees, so Cyclone Raven is the key to defending that. And then right into the tank. So very, very typical TVT setup, except for that 3rd CC timing. The most typical 3rd CC timing is absolutely going to be what TY is doing after that 1-1-1. But he's not going to be so bold as to go to the on-location 3rd CC. Last game, he was kind of pairing it up with a push-out. So kind of like the best defense is a good offense is the thinking there a lot of the time. It's also, again, a map that I would say is very well set up for it. You still have the high ground, really, obviously with the ramp there for this base, but the last map just like looks really nice for it. And once again, prioritizing that faster second factory over building like 2 factories at once additionally. This time, though, it is after 3rd CC. Actually, supply blocked? Oh, not too much. Or he called down supply. Now he's building hecka supplies. Anyways, scan from Maru, who is very curious as to what his opponent is doing. That scan comes down kind of as the Banshee arrives by the looks of things. He's already killed quite a few SCVs. So Maru... I mean, that scan wouldn't have actually told him that it was Banshees anyway. I think, right? Oh, okay, so he already killed 1 Banshee. I was like, why is the count so high? He seemed to have such a good defensive position. Well, because the other Banshee did also help out. So 8 SCVs are killed, but Maru's actually ahead in SCV still. That much faster 3rd CC really working out for him. And since he did get a scan once again on a second factory... And actually, it looks like TY not even able quite to afford a 3rd factory as of yet. And actually, he could. He is currently dealing with a potential push from Maru, though, so I think that was the hesitation. But, you know, because he's not... So here's what he's doing, I guess, that kind of weird makes the economy a bit weirder as far as affording things, is that he's not going into what is typically like Hellions and then 2 factories with tech labs. He's going literally 2 tech labs and then reactored Vikings very consistently. So that is a big chunk of change. All of the heavy item units from these structures. So that is going to take up a lot of your money. It also is going to reduce the amount of fodder that you have, which we did see in effect in the last game to an extent. Maru probably had just enough anyway, but that lack of additional units protecting tanks mean that they get lonely. And they certainly weren't at a critical mass of which they kind of protected themselves in that last game. Something that TY is, as I was saying, is probably going to be more keen on getting to this time around. He's not going to do a tank push out. Absolutely not going to do a tank push out. Jesus, 2 starports are on the way. But instead going to position himself as correctly as possible and play a very defensive game. But Maru is already onto it as well, so what I was going to get into is that because he scanned the second factory, he scans again, by the way, wants to see probably if there's starports or factories. He sees nothing. However, nothing is still a tell, because that scan might have missed the additional starports. 100%, if someone was doing a typical mech structure, they would have the factories there. I don't think they would actually put a lot of thought into hiding factories, not just because that's like not necessary, I guess, unless you really like are playing 4D chess, but because it actually messes with some SimCity and like tank popping out issues the more that you kind of cramp factories in together compared to starports that pop out units that fly. So I actually think that was a tell. But Maru, finally gonna get to this point. Maru is already going into Hurricane engines. That's what they're called now. Anyway, he was already going into anti-mech strategy. So Maru might not have been planning his own mech from the beginning, but because he scanned the mech of his opponent fast, he was able to just go ahead and immediately add on a second starport. Which is old news at this point because it took too long to get to it. But he's added on a second starport. So he's been cranking out double starport Vikings for a little longer, but TY going right into triple starport and also just producing 2 Vikings at a time very consistently means that they've actually kind of matched each other on Vikings. However, we see that TY has added 2 tech labs, not any additional reactors, so his plan is Ravens. Which, this actually just looks like it's going to go into battlecruisers versus battlecruisers. I did not watch GSL. I got to get that out there in case I call things correctly and then I can feel very smart and you guys know I'm very smart. But yeah, I didn't watch GSL. But first of all, if you had told me that Maru TY was going to go into like a no-rush 10-minute battlecruiser versus battlecruiser, I'd be like, yep, sure. And then second of all, this is just the way that these things kind of go. No one really has an army that like straight up kills someone, especially with all of the defensive positioning that a TVT has past this kind of 3cc setup. If Maru was playing straight up old-fashioned bio, he would be stopping that 4th CC from coming down. He would be trying to drop and get different locations, hit at the same time. Yeah, sure. But he instead went into his own... I keep saying anti-mech because I believe that is more so what it is. Like, obviously you can play anti-mech with bio, but, you know, there is definitely something to skipping the bio portion, which has a limited lifespan anyway against a very well set up mech player, and is going right into air. Now, the trick is if your opponent doesn't catch that you've gone right into air, you can just, like, kill them, right? But TY has not only figured out that's what Maru has done, is also just going into an appropriate amount of air himself. Not getting caught thinking it would be 20 Marauders killing him, so he has 20 tanks. No, he has, you know, similar number of Vikings. First scuffle happened right there, right? But it was a scuffle that didn't seem bound to win the game either way, and it did not. Maru probably taking the worst trade, I guess. We can actually check. That's resources lost. Yeah, okay. But the reason I'm just like, I guess, it doesn't seem to really matter. We're talking about grander plans than what we currently see on screen right now. And the grander plan from Maru in trying to headbutt his own mech and air units into his opponent is that he's going to try and get into battlecruisers. I mean, he already did. First battlecruiser is out. Second battlecruiser is on the way. Scan reveals that, although just barely to be fair. Oh my god, it actually doesn't see it. Really? Okay, so he technically doesn't know. But it doesn't necessarily matter because, one, he's probably figured that could be where they're headed. There's a lack of ravens on Maru's side. Maru clearly isn't doing the same thing that TY is doing, but he's not going bio, and it'd be really foolish of him to go into like a pure ground-based mech army at this point. So it's probably battlecruisers. But then second, TY has an answer to battlecruisers. He's got Matrix. That's what he needs. So even if he was kind of surprised by the battlecruisers, or say the amount of battlecruisers, he's like, oh shit, you're already at 4. You know, he does have Matrix. And so here come those Matrices now, killing all the tanks defending this planetary, which even if it was an orbital, wouldn't want to lift anyway. Look at the amount of air we got going on here, and a little battle as well. Both anti-air missiles hitting the opponents. Battlecruisers trying to make something happen. One of them getting disabled. And we do have TY with the superior Viking count by quite a bit. Battlecruisers, super slow, super expensive, super supply heavy too. And their initial numbers are not particularly impressive, especially when someone has Viking Raven. Maybe they're more impressive if, again, you had been caught only building tanks. But yeah, that's not very impressive. And 4 battlecruisers probably won't be very impressive. 6 might not even be impressive. But if we get to a point in which both players have what they think is their ideal army, so if that's battlecruiser Raven Viking or just Raven Viking, I don't know. Then that's when we're going to see the real clash and the real fireworks, I suppose. Right now, Maru is kind of holding on. Not dying necessarily, but he is kind of holding on. He is more scared of TY than TY is scared of him. And TY knows that as well. He's been expanding very well behind this, but Maru, despite being under all of this pressure, is also expanding pretty freaking well. It is TY with a bigger mineral bank, slightly bigger gas bank. Gas is obviously going to be the most important thing. And I don't think we ever saw the Cyclones really make a hit. I'm going to be honest with you. I actually don't remember what the Cyclone now does or what he gets upgraded, so gotta bring the patch notes up. All I know is these Cyclones have not really had a chance to shine, because one thing that hasn't changed, they are still more like glass cannons, and as far as I know, they still get 2-shot by tanks, which TY is making sure to have at least some of on his ground. This helps tear down SAG defense. As we see, Maru also building his own missile turrets, right? Tanks will help tear that down. They will help tear down Cyclone numbers or Thors if your opponent decided that had to be the way they go. And yeah, certainly will kill any Cyclones. Yeah, there you go. 2-shot. Easy peasy. SCV sacrifice very much on purpose. Maru might consider doing the same thing eventually. But TY actually had almost 100 SCVs, and that's why he sacrificed 10. So 10 for now. You know, 80, 90 SCVs, probably okay until we get into more of the 5,000 bank. And then we'll probably see more SCV sacrificed. But right now it is it's a game of trying to create the best possible composition, which theoretically is going to be that battlecruiser Raven Viking, because battlecruisers are so microable, they kind of always get that little bit of an edge. But, you know, it does depend on how they're used. If they're ever found without their teleports, actually, in, you know, such like this, then they're much worse. So all the battlecruisers teleport to deal with a couple of tanks. I guess they are still protected by a mighty Viking fleets. Both players' Vikings count very, very similar, so they feel okay doing that. They just wanted to get the heck out of that position, apparently. And now I get the, oh god, Vikings landing They do have smart servos. They do land and lift very quickly. And they do kill buildings pretty quick, and there's that many of them. So SCVs went down that Maru didn't intentionally sacrifice, but still at 73 is probably okay. And he did lose 2 command centers, 1 orbital and 1 planetary. He's going to want to replace those. He's going to want to get up to the same number of bases as his opponents, which TY has remained unscathed back on his side of the map. And he's also going to want those extra orbitals so that he will be able to eventually sacrifice his own SCVs. Another orbital is going to get taken down as it thinks that the Vikings of TY had left. They did not. That was a bit of a trick. Gotcha moment. Maru now making sure that it's protected, but a little bit too late. And he really does not have a lot of extra command centers. This was not that passive of a game, I guess. And it's pretty passive, but not that passive that both of them have 5,000 bank as well as 12 additional command centers. Oh my god, especially because they've been putting so much of their money into production. 8 starports for TY, 7 for Maru. If that is literally the only thing you're producing from, then that does make sense. 8 production facilities, 8 to 10 I guess actually is where we'd actually find ourselves in a lot of compositions. But anyway, we have Maru deciding that he has a chance here. Perhaps he saw that he had an upgrade lead. TY's +3 attack is nowhere near completion. And I think unbeknownst to him, he might even have a bit of a timing right now. TY is investing into battlecruisers. Again, that's kind of the theoretically ideal endgame composition. But they're not quite out and ready to go yet. Okay, no, never mind. 4 of them are. Actually, he's almost already at the counts of Maru. No idea what's going to happen here. All I know is that Maru has an upgrade lead. Will it matter enough? All of the battlecruisers getting taken out of the equation, either by dying or by being disabled. All the Ravens have been shot down. It is TY's Viking count that is also starting to decrease a little bit faster than Maru's, yet Maru's overall supply, I guess, is still questionable because he's lost 30 SCVs. As far as the army supply goes, he is in good shape. Again, all the battlecruisers pretty much dying here. Another one bites the dust for TY as he rallies into his opponent's Vikings. TY, knowing that he is on the ropes, decides that he has to go into some additional anti-air measures. And what is the best thing that he can do with 2 factories and tech labs? That would be the Thor. And the Thor would be extremely helpful right now. It'd actually be really, really good. Not only single target versus battlecruiser, but splash versus the Vikings. Most importantly, there's no tanks. The Vikings would not be able to shoot down at the Thors. The battlecruisers would be able to, but they've also used all their Yamatos. So these Thors might just save the day, and I think they will. Oh, that first splash hit on the Vikings was pretty freaking good. And we got 17 Vikings versus 10, but those Thors are going to help out so freaking much. Now they got to decide, though, they don't want to go in the single target. 1 more Yamato was available. 1 Thor gets taken out of the equation. Another battlecruiser from TY actually pops out in the midst of things, gets its own Yamato off, and more Vikings are popping out. Defender's advantage starting to kick in here for TY, as he might just be able to hold on, but he is so low on units. He desperately needs these Thors. He desperately needs these Vikings. It looks like he has at least been trying to do some type of attack. I think we did have something hitting this command center, keeping Maru a little hesitant to completely rally forward. But now Maru does have a lot of reinforcements that could join in. I mean, hell, it actually... The missile turrets are even causing a delay. I'm pretty sure something was there attacking the command center because it's injured, but the missile turrets are also adding into the delay. When his units arrive on the front lines, they're already injured. I mean, that's it's a bit comical, but it's something that TY really needs. He needs that damage on them. He needs that time bought. And he will get it. Maybe enough to get him back into this game. Going for some battlecruiser harassment with the battlecruisers. They're able to live or pop out elsewhere. I don't know. Most of his production certainly is in his main base. Scans going every which way, trying to determine where the bases are. And perhaps also where some of the army is. This battlecruiser is without a jump, so it probably will die. Maru still at 80 plus workers. Okay, 70 plus workers. SCVs are repairing the battlecruiser. I don't think that's enough SCVs. Yeah, actually don't think even 3 more was enough, but, well, the rest of the cavalry was coming in anyway. And then kill the SCVs, of course. Yeah, sure. Well, during all of this cleanup, TY is on the road to recovery. Now, what's really going to be interesting here are if the Thors are better than the battlecruisers right now. Again, battlecruiser is probably the best in theory because they got Yamato, because they got the jump. They're very microable, but in a head-to-head with no special effects, no Yamato, no micro, Thors pack a punch. You don't really want to be in that position, especially if your battlecruiser count isn't that high. because the Vikings obviously do not shoot down. They don't help. Let's see what happens here. We got a lot of Thors in single target mode, ripping through all of the battle cruisers. Maru's also being disabled on many of his units, and so he now lacks anything that shoots on the ground, has to land about half of his Vikings, a quarter of his Vikings, which gets really awkward because he's fighting a sky battle and a land battle with units that are really only designed for sky battle. I mean, the ground is not bad, but you know, that's not really what they want to be doing. And once again, fighting into Defender's advantage, TY just with so many more units pumping out, able to take care of things. Missile turrets once again coming in to be a bother as Maru tries to retreat, and it's now Maru who is lower in supply. He's got his own battlecruiser harassment happening as well, I suppose, but now it's kind of a... the table has been flipped, right? Like, now Maru is the one who has a disturbingly low number of buildings on his side of the map, not a whole lot of mining going down. He is now the one whose army is licking its wounds, getting repaired, and waiting for further reinforcements. And now even his scans are revealing that TY has, in fact, kept at the expansion despite the pressure. And there's still missile turrets as well, so it's just such an annoying thing. Maru is in a little bit of trouble because I think right now it is currently a Thor problem. You know, if he had enough battlecruisers and enough control over the game that he was able to Yamato and escape, then he could just harass the guy to death, basically. You know, even big battles that happen, he'd still want to teleport out with barely dead, not quite dead battlecruisers, and then eventually you'd win out over time, but not quite there yet. And then also, you know, if you can get tanks involved, that would also be very ideal. But he had just had no tanks because it was a pure air battle for a while. TY's ability, perhaps, to gather as many Thors as he did, a little bit of surprise. He's only working off of 2 factories. I am so surprised, but he kept at it, and Maru didn't necessarily compensate for that fast enough, I guess, as he did lose that last battle. But now getting some tanks. And I think now also waiting for a Remax once more. And is probably going to try and get these Yamatos off, yeah, before the real battle ensues. Here's the real battle. Everything collected together. The Yamatos did go off, but the battlecruisers just get massacred, man. And the Viking count was not high enough for Maru. Really wanted to have those tanks right there already in position to stop the Thors from getting as close as possible. Well, that just didn't happen, did it? So Maru takes another bad fight, this time more on his side of the map as well, forced to take another, I think, questionable one. Cyclones are trying to help out, and I guess they're actually decent in this situation. The Thors have been reduced in number to begin with, reduced in health, certainly. And then also don't really want to be attacking these kind of pesky Cyclones. They want to be trying to kill those big items like a battlecruiser or getting the splash on the Vikings. So the Cyclones, all right. I doubted you for the first 20 minutes of the game. They had like, well, I guess, when were they around? They were around for the first 10 minutes of the game and then they died. But they've come in clutch. We got ourselves some Viking ground harassments going down. I think on both sides. Oh, the Cyclones are harassing TY's orbital. Maru's 4th, once again, is killed. A massive amount of SCVs, but Maru had also replaced a lot of SCVs, so I don't know if he's going to replace too many more after that. Maru getting a chance to run down his opponent's units as they are not as big in numbers. Yeah, 16 and 19, and he's reinforcing. So, yeah, TY is forced to retreat. He was trying to place some very offensive missile turrets, and it's not going to work out. Maru now with a healthy mining base of rich Vespian gas. TY has been mining off that rich Vespian gas almost the entire game. He got this 4th up really, really quick, or fifth up really, really quick. So this is entirely mined out. He still has the gold a little bit. Maru's starting to run on his, but minerals aren't as important. TY has plenty of minerals, no problem there. He does not have plenty of gas, so he's trying to get that up and running once more as he loses his own nice number of SCVs. Both of them still so high in the SCV count, though. I don't think you need to make 7 more, TY. I don't think so, but I am not the GSL champion. So, you know, he does, you know, good things. And I guess he's using these SCVs not just to mine, to be fair. He's been bringing them to repair, although that might have also been like more like a sacrifice, why not repair situation, whatever. He's also been using to build attack defense. So, I mean, I don't know if you need 91 in this game, but he's got it. He's also got a couple of Hellions, because why not? At no point in this game was Blue Flame really important. We didn't have that more typical mech versus bio thing where like Blue Flame might have come into effect, but you don't need it. SV still going down. Planetary still going down. Battle cruisers just in the right place here as Maru's army was all the way over to the right side. Now it's TY's turn to be in a slightly wrong place. We're getting ourselves some base trades, literally just trading out base for base as both players try and get remaxed again. TY actually already remaxed. And he did not just stay on his kind of like, not mass Thor, but he's not gone back into Thors. I think he realized that the Thor problem has been kind of fixed. The Cyclones were there to help, the tanks were there to help, and that is really what you need against them. So Maru now using those tanks to obviously push forward, kill a couple command centers. That is fantastic, but when it comes to a pure air versus air battle, tanks do not shoot up. Easy peasy, right? TY's only got one tank because he doesn't find nearly as much use for them. He is continuing to try and push into his opponent's main base, perhaps, and that is where all the production is. That could be a huge problem. TY actually has split up his army a little bit here, so he's going to try and stop Maru from doing the same thing. Maru, realizing he won't get there in time to do a real base race, is going to retreat back home to try and deal with this, but of course the battlecruisers of TY let us teleport. As soon as the first Viking shows its shot, he teleports over actually to another base of Maru. It's a little bit dangerous. He's now without teleports and he is out on the map, but TY's Vikings are floating around looking for the opponent's Vikings and battlecruisers, hopefully finding them not paying attention. They do not. They completely go on the right side, whereas TY's Vikings go to the middle. They'll land, they do some damage, and now Maru actually is having a bit of a struggle to determine where exactly he should be going to. He scans the battlecruisers, he sees them running away, he sees them running away all alone without teleport, and he wants to get that kill. Then he also has to deal with the Vikings that are chewing through his buildings rather quickly, so he sent back his tanks and a battlecruiser or two to do that, but the battlecruiser is actually very vulnerable, very vulnerable. That's not going to work out at all. Gets one Yamato off, but also loses the battlecruiser. And the Vikings did not chase down the battlecruisers of TY, so they were just out of position, unable to help back at home. Maru loses out totally, completely, and utterly on that last 2-minute trade, and TY is now in a commanding lead in the worker counts as well as the army supply. He also evened up those 3-3 upgrades a long time ago, and the tank upgrades aren't as important. He is also leading in that, I suppose. But Maru's tanks are at least going to try and stop TY from getting his 4th command center placements. It's been killed so many times, it looks like Maru actually never got to mine from it. He did a little, but TY wanted to take the resources. Not going to happen, not this time around. I guess the tanks can't shoot up, but TY really doesn't want to land his Vikings against them, right? Especially since now everything of Maru is packed together. 97 arms play for Maru to 130 of TY, but TY's army isn't all together. TY has his battlecruisers once again going for some harassment. Command center goes down from Maru. Maru trying to get this one last base up and running, but here comes the teleport of TY. He's bringing everything together. He's got that 30 armor supply lead, and he is looking for the end of the game, which I believe he will find here as Maru was completely overwhelmed. And that is a tied-up TVT series. And Game 3 is here, finally on a new map. Although not that new anymore, but new to me. In the top right of Ghost River, it is Maru. And in the top left, we do have TY, so one of those kind of U-shaped maps. Not as distinctly U-shaped as some others, like Ulrina, I suppose. Well, we had Maru win out fairly easily in game number 1. Game 2 lasted a very long time, so you'd say that was a contested game 2, and it was, but towards the end of it, it really looked like TY had such a handle on everything. Maru not, I would actually say his biggest problem was not quickly adapting to the Thors or taking that fight when he saw how many Thors there were as opposed to backing up and reevaluating his composition. Might have been his biggest problem, but he was also taking harassment. TY had done a really obnoxious thing by placing missile turrets very consistently aggressively. Maru had oftentimes defensive stag defense, as one would expect, but they didn't have like a forest of missile turrets littered around, and that also really annoyed Maru's momentum. Whenever he had momentum and trying to rally forward, he would be bothered by that. So I think TY had a chance to show a little more of that kind of grand concept type of idea of TVT, where it's not really necessarily about the like how much you're moving your army and where and how fast. You're not necessarily worried about the individual unit micro. but rather you can kind of dissect the whole picture and do things that are really impactful with seemingly kind of limited effort, I guess, making it look simpler than it was. And TY would be really good at that particular thing, not only because that's what he was known for, I guess, over StarCraft 2, being a really, a mastermind of TVT with its tactics particularly, but also Brood War. Very good Brood War player, went back to playing Brood War, now playing it for some time once again. I don't think he ever really stopped, and that is very much important in Brood War TVT, which actually almost always looks like that. Even longer, actually, so... but we got a change up here finally on the new map. Maru has gone for a 2-Rax opener. Only 1 Rax proxied, however, so not a full-on cheese here. TY is not going for a command center after barracks, which would have been vulnerable to this. He is still vulnerable, though, because he didn't realize it was happening, and that command center just came down at the worst possible time. Right now, TY might be panicking, thinking that it's a double proxy Rax. It's not double proxied, but as you can see, it's looking for problems. Second Reaper finally pops out, and so he will be able to hold on. But it really does suck, because had he had any indication of this a second sooner, that command center doesn't get canceled, it gets stopped. The SCV goes, ugh, and then runs back home. Don't lose 100 minerals in the SCV. So Maru's opener already fairly effective, and he has the chance to add in more damage if he really wants to push the micro issue. I guess he could, but if you don't, because you assume your opponent's going to be able to defend, which is probably correct, you can still threaten a backstab. There's nothing that TY can do offensively against this until he gets a starport, and then maybe a starport and get a medevac, Cyclone, medevac, Liberator, or Banshee. And then you're able to do something in return, but you always got to be worried about the Reaper backstab. Now, it's not as easy as saying, well, like, if you move out the Reaper backstab. I mean, some of the things are really, really weird base trade, but if you want to play a typical game of StarCraft 2, you don't want to encourage such an issue, they're going to stay at home. And I think Maru knows that is how TY is going to play, and TY is playing like that with a fast 3rd CC already on the way as well. Looks a little weird because the second command center was delayed, but yeah, it is already on the way. Maru's 3rd CC not going to be as quick this time around, right? He's been doing it prior to the starport for the past 2 games. Can't do it this game, but here's a chance to perhaps overwhelm TY. I didn't think it was going to be possible, but I think TY got a little too aggressive with the Cyclone, lost the Hellion, and then loses every other unit in the blink of an eye. Oh my god, that actually happened so freaking quickly. My bad, guys. That Cyclone was sharking around trying to find units in their place, and it died. Well, that is on TY. I was talking about the backstab because I did assume Maru wasn't going to try and force the direct issue. But I was wrong. Maru was like, hey, I see an opportunity to force the direct issue. You gave me your Cyclone. I can take on your other units with my Micro and the Reaper's grenades versus Marines' regular old Gauss rifles. And he was right about that. TY, he's dead. He's dead. You can't lose 14 workers here, even with a 3rd CC being faster than your opponent, and hope to win this game. If it was later on, if it was a minute 8 when 14 SCVs go down kind of easily, then there's a chance there's a comeback, actually. Don't want to underestimate TVT's comebacks, right? But this early on, this is when usually this type of damage is just enough. Even Maru, who we see as the comeback king, would not be able to recover from this. Medevac Micro also helping out, obviously, really showing off his skills here. Second tank, it's his 3rd tank, actually. Will pop out and help. Gonna get that tank. Save 2 Reapers and a Cyclone while he's at it. TY doesn't want to give up, obviously. Not his last game in GSL. It is the first series, so he has at least one more chance. But it is kind of a disappointing loss. You think you're getting everything set up and you're both going to play out the rest of the TVT, and then suddenly you just die. But that is somehow TVT goes, and Maru goes for an aggressive opener and uses it aggressively to gain not just an advantage, but the actual game win. So Maru, rather unsurprisingly, we'll move on to the winner's match. Match number 2 is going to be between the bottom right player Shin, aka Ragnarok, and top left player Creator. Both these players very much staples of GSL. But when you think of Maru and TY, you think of many of their epic TVT battles, which we just had once again in the last series. It doesn't really happen so much with Creator and Shin. Certainly they have played together, perhaps even recently, but it was much of a historic matchup. It is one of perhaps a very aggressive Zerg player versus often aggressive Protoss player. I don't really put Creator into a like a cheesy group or a only ever aggressive group, but they're a player who does try and do anything and everything, including even some different types of styles. He has certainly displayed some of his own ideas to how to play out the matchups, PvT, PvZ. PvP, pretty much normal, but the other matchups, yeah, I think he's shown some of his own uniqueness in that. Like in PvT, he was one of the more gung-ho players as far as that faster storm for a period. But yeah, so he can be kind of a unique player, but everyone really remembers him for his out-of-game play, I suppose. Emotions? Yeah, that's the best way to put it. For his emotions. Shin is the player that is the hardest to read as far as, I guess, the opponents reading them, because he can be cheesy, but he can also play some macro games. We definitely think of him as more of an aggressive player for certain, but you don't get to as many deep runs as Shin has without being able to play that macro game. So that's kind of a weird thing to always be wary of. But then also, as far as his day-to-day performance, that is always in question. Every time that I believe that I am right in thinking that Shin won't do well, like this past Katowice, because he hadn't done very well behind that, and it's not really a great year, and he's kind of a guy who has always had kind of the ups and downs, so don't depend on him to do the same thing he did in 2023, blah, blah, blah. I was wrong. He did really well again in Katowice. And then as soon as I'm like, okay, guys, sorry, like I keep underestimating Shin. This time I won't do it. Then he bombs out. So very difficult for me to read at the very least. But he's got some Lings on the field, 6 of them already, which is actually quite a few. I mean, the Probe's definitely going to live very long, and the Adept shouldn't really be getting a whole lot done. Second Adept is on the way for Creator as he adds on a Stargate, so a very typical Protoss opener. And Shin is getting into that speed eventually. So yeah, the Adept won't be doing very much. Creep Tumor should also be done in time. I just want to scout anything peculiar. Let's say, 20 Lings on the high ground. Could happen. The day of the Ling bust is pretty much over. But Shin does it. So that's the one guy you'd really want to be paranoid of doing that. Maybe other Zerg players, you wouldn't be as sad, for instance, if the Adept didn't get the scout. You'd be like, oh, well, I can hedge my bets and say that he's not doing that. But with Shin, not as much. Also, now with 2 Adepts on the offensive, if he does find an opportunity to get into one of these nooks here in the mineral lines, he will take it and kill a couple of drones. Why not? Oh, completely missed it, as did Creator, apparently. 2 Lings snuck right on through, didn't they? Third Adept did pop out, but not in time to block the wall. And now this does see a very typical Protoss opener, as I was saying, but that is still information. Shin now can confidently say, I'm not going to be attacked by, like, Twilight Council, right? There's only Adepts are going to show up. There's no way that he's going to get to a Dark Shrine very quickly. Yeah, okay. So it's typical, right? Yeah. It is typical. So third Nexus is going to be coming down. The Adept will finally join up with the rest of its crew, and we are going to have at least 2 Oracles on the field, if not a total 3 on a familiar map, Site Delta, being from the old map pool. 2 Adepts at this point might consider leaving. That is a decent number of Speedlings, but it looks like with the Oracles, about to be plural Oracles helping out, then I guess he doesn't think he needs to. Second Oracle stayed at home, that makes sense. But a third Oracle is around. So he can start to send those Oracles, plural, to the front lines. But eventually, you do evacuate with that ground army. I mean, there definitely has been more, fancy Protoss play with the aggressive Adepts and Oracles, watching Showtime or Max Packs, occasionally Hero as well, but for some reason Showtime really comes to mind. Play around with these units exactly like Creator's doing was actually a really nice change of pace, in which sometimes before, years ago, I guess at this point, it felt like you'd be like, okay, 2 adepts, okay, I'm good, okay, I got a little damage, okay, bye-bye, and then it's only the oracles trying to do something. This whole, like, protection plan for the adepts to find overly courageous lings or creep tumors or queens, and killing them as well is a nice addition. But the oracles obviously have the benefit of being able to go behind the mineral lines and potentially get those drones. You do expect the Zerg players to have appropriate defenses, and Shin does, so the oracles shouldn't do a whole lot of damage. But now using the revelations to get a couple of creep tumors. 1 drone goes down, but those queens nearly got revenge. And everything is pretty much on course for a regular PvZ. Triple Oracle was made. We got ourselves Blink and +1 on the way, so very typical startup for 3 CC, or 3 Nexus, sorry. Just cast 2 Terrans, that's my excuse. And then we may also have those Oracles now combined with some Stalker pressure. It can't be super, super dedicated, but as you can see, a decent number of Stalkers with mobility, pretty good to have on the field. If they're protected by the Adepts, what we just saw right there, they're less likely to be totally surrounded and decimated by a Ling attack. And the Oracles. So everything combined together means that Shin also has to get everything combined together and actually kind of take this seriously. You don't want this to lead to more stuff, right? So it can very easily, easily be dealt with, I guess, in quotes, I guess. It can be dealt with. We see that Shin is building army. He's already at 68 drones. He is going into roaches and lings. +1 missiles on the way. This can be dealt with. Creator is not going for 8 gateways, proxy gateway, war prisms out in the field already, whatever, right? This can be dealt with, but if you underestimate the start, you can give them the opportunity to snowball, even if that wasn't their plan. So that's important to remember for the Zerg's perspective, who, as always, want to be doing that whole waiting until the very last moment to actually build their army. Although that would be in a very, very macro-oriented type of ZVP or Zerg player, where Shin is more likely to go for a big old bust. So if this was Serral going into a hive at this point, some absurdly fast hive, well then yes. But Shin is actually, he's reached that point of drones where he now will produce nothing but army. And now it is Creator's turn to use this kind of offensively placed Stalkers to actually just try and slow this down. This is really not unexpected here, as Creator should be expecting such an attack from a Zerg, from Shin. And he does have at least 1 shield battery. More on the way. Disruptors are on the way, but will they be here in time? Sentries found on the forefront, not able to help nearly as much as they were hoping. They do have that Overlord dropping out the Queens to help out against the Oracles, and they will do so. 2 of them already taken down, and actually this just looks like game to me. Yep. I mean, Creator, it was just awkward. The Stalker count, really, as we can see here, might have been able to grow enough to kind of turn the tides, I guess, but it really needed that more time. Shin saw an opportunity, pounced on him, got rid of so many time buyers, such as those sentries, right? Ravagers were there, but still the force will have to be broken down first. And then there was nothing for Creator to do to stop the snowball himself. So I talked about the snowball the opposite direction in case Shin was being the 80, 90 drone type of Zerg. Well, he's not. So it was actually more about the other way around. Does Shin get his attack? Does Shin snowball with it? And yes, he absolutely freaking has. I mean, Creator is, well, one for the fantasy GGs. Yes, it's not surprising here. But he is dead. Third Nexus is gone, 4th Nexus dead. Army decimated, and Shin is happily on 4 bases, creating those extra drones and getting to the infestation pit. So he is moving on. And Disruptors can only try and make so much of a comeback, especially if they die. And that is going to be that. I mean, you can really see, in my opinion, what a 10-second addition would have done for Creator. If he had 10 extra seconds, or 5 extra seconds even, if the force field had come down on the choke, had to be broken first, and then maybe there weren't enough Ravagers to break all of them or something like that, then the static defense is done, then another warping of Stalkers happen, and they get to ball up together to be really effective. I mean, this is something that Protoss do deal with a lot, right? And oftentimes it's not because they're completely blindsided that they lose to this, but rather that they're a little late to it, and then, the Zerg bust them. But Shin, doing a really nice job. Doing what we expect from him, I suppose. And now we move on to game 2. In the bottom right, up 1 on Oceanborn, it is Shin. And in the top left, we do have Creator. Creator doing very much like normal Protoss things. Adepts, Oracle, little harassment, little harassment, little harassment. Staying on the field to provide some pressure to the Zerg that then turns into, or is additionally also scouting. A little bit of pressure, a little bit of scouting. And then hopefully a little bit of buying time too. So it really felt like he was doing everything according to the Protoss playbook. And yes, he had a 4th Nexus. Yes, he had a good amount of probes. Yes, he had a lot of technology on the way that wasn't there. So there was greed that was impacting his ability to hold on to that attack. But, as I was saying, 5 or 10 extra seconds, especially 10 extra seconds, and those sentries probably aren't on the front, so they can provide at least a Guardian shield. Still would have helped as well. They immediately got bopped. Ideally, they force field and force the Ravagers take a little bit of time to deal with that. Then the stack defense is done, and then the Stalkers have like additional 5 warped in. I think they get 5 gateways. Maybe the Disruptor is actually very close to being on the field, and it just can be very different. It can cause that second hesitation from the Zerg player that then turns into another opportunity for the Protoss. You know, I'd say it's kind of rare to see the Protoss deal with that super easily. Sometimes you do see the Zerg players just steamroll 100%, which happened in that last game. No chance. And sometimes we see them have a really good chance, but then the Protoss did a lot of those things in the right amount of time to hold on. And we're like, okay, whew, that was difficult. But we rarely ever see the Protoss just handle that attack easy peasy, lemon squeezy, no problem whatsoever. There's a lot of empathy, I guess, from my part on that. But if Creator had invested into more Stalkers instead of the Disruptors that weren't there, or the Nexus that wasn't mining, and you can see how he would handle that better. But a couple extra seconds on his side, maybe he would have actually been able to do that barely hold that we sometimes see. I mean, hell, we even sometimes see Protoss players lose that 3rd Nexus, but they do a good job of retaining the probes and retaining the army. So their 4th Nexus actually is one of the defensive points alongside the natural. And even though they lost a base, it's still kind of a gray area as to who's ahead. You've definitely seen that too, but that was kind of a bop. It was kind of just Creator. Not totally, completely prepared. He was getting there. He knew something was on the way because he had stack defense, but wasn't there as of yet. So what is Creator going to do this time around as we look at Shin going for 3 hatch speed on the way now? It is normal Zerg stuff. It is now the Protoss side of things that we have to see. It's Twilight Council, Stargate, Robo. Those are the 3 choices. Difference of opener already from the Protoss. Adept, no aggression, no scouting with the Adept, into Stalker. Already a very big difference. So the Stalker obviously is going to actually tear down the Overlord from ever getting anything seen. And then the Adept is being really... The Adept is being very cowardly, I suppose. That she's staying at home. But the player is being kind of courageous by not doing any scouting. But it is a trade-off, you know? So you're basically, with a build like this, double Stargate, guys. Double Stargate. With a build like this, even if you scouted them doing something, what can you do? If it was a Ling all-in, I guess indefinite walls would be a possibility. And then you can afford, 1-year Stargates to produce or something like that. It's a possibility, but it would be very difficult. So, I mean, in a way, you're kind of just saying, well, it's already so absurd that it might as well just continue being like absurd, just might as well just be as greedy as freaking possible. And this is something we haven't seen in a little bit, so Shin might be a little surprised too, but the double Stargate Phoenix does occasionally come out in this matchup. The more that the seconds tick on by, the more that Shin has no doubt been scratching his head. Where's the Adept pressure? Why did you open up with a Stalker? What are you hiding? Why is the Oracle not flying over here to get the Overlord kill with the Stalker? So he is going to sacrifice an Overlord for the greater good, and that is absolutely the correct call. The Phoenix very possibly could have bulked up into a number of 4 or 6 forever showing themselves. And then they would have killed the first Overlord they came across super quick, and Shin would have very limited amount of time to react. Instead, that Overlord gets the scout. That Stalker did not stop it from seeing both Stargates. So again, Shin already knew something was up, something weird was happening, but exactly what that weirdness was, you can't determine without that scout. Decent amount of Lings here. Not a bad situation, not the worst situation, I suppose, for Creator, but still too many Lings to handle. And what are Phoenix pretty bad against? Lings. So it was actually really important that those units were in the best possible position. They were in okay position because they had their backs up against the wall, but they weren't in the best possible position, which I say would have been the Zealots on the front, Adepts in the back, with the Pylon and Shield Battery helping. And this is a really big disturbance. This is a huge disturbance. This is actually kind of like the linchpin that holds everything together, you know? When you get that ground army broken to pure Lings, you don't get an opportunity to get your base. It is a dramatic difference if that base barely survives, right? The units barely do their job. The Ling numbers are just a little bit too low. And that third base is finishing. The Pylon, the Shield Battery is finishing. It is a dramatic difference. Instead, that third base itself being so delayed is a problem. You know, if these Lings had busted through that natural right then, that also would have been a huge problem. But even without that, and they barely managed not to bust through that, even just this delay on the third Nexus is such a freaking pain. Because the Phoenix aren't doing anything either, by the way. The Phoenix, they've been found out, well, okay, they did something. They killed 6 Overlords. But the Phoenix were found out in time to have Spore Crawlers and Queens. And that was obviously the most important thing for the Zerg player. They tried to bring all their Overlords back, but even if they do, Phoenix can kill Overlords pretty quickly. But it would be very different if this was a very chaotic game in which the Lings successfully cancel the third Nexus, but then the Phoenix are killing, 4 Queens, 6 Overlords, 5 Hydras, 12 drones, and then it's just really scrappy. But even though the Phoenix are getting some damage done, it is almost inevitable, I suppose. I would still say that third Nexus delay is such a huge bummer, because it was really delayed. That wasn't just a, oops, had to cancel it once, let's go back to it. It is only 80% done as I am speaking. Shin did manage to sneak a drone out. That is the problem of the Zerg, sneaking those drones to build the buildings. But once they're built, things can't do anything. Hydras are now being made as well. More mobile anti-air is always nice. We do not have Charge. We do not have Archons. We do not have Storm. So the little move out right there from Creator wasn't the most terrifying. Just killed a couple of creep tumors. Overseer gets in and sees that the Stargate production has stopped. So it's not going to be into a really, really turtly carrier game or something, or even more Phoenix to worry about, because sometimes that can happen. The Phoenix actually outnumber the Hydras if they think, oh, they're not doing anything else with the Phoenix. But no, that's not going to be the case here. Besides the fact that Shin probably is just going to go into Ling Bailing Hydra anyway. But he definitely knows what his opponent is doing. That is moving on. Third Nexus is done for Creator, obviously. Fourth, pretty quick, just with how the third Nexus finished the time that it did, but really nicely timed. Fourth Nexus, if he can get that up and running, that is beautiful. Because Shin's fourth base is almost like on time with that. So Creator kind of making up almost for the lack of third Nexus. He actually had produced a lot of probes too, so his saturation of the third base happened very quickly. But he only has Phoenix right now. Again, no Charge, no Archons. One is being created. Not a lot of units of General either, and these Immortals aren't necessarily the best thing to have against Hydras. The one Archon that was created is going to get Focus Fire down, despite the Shield Battery helping out. And the rest of the units are just a little bit too late, but it does look like without the Banelings, Shin is going to have to take some time here. Here come the Banelings now, however. No certificate hooks necessary. Don't even need it. Don't even worry. These are some decent force fields coming down with the power of the shield battery still helping out. The cannon even providing some help. Really nice force fields, but actually some units get unlocked from the stasis. Lings get through as well, and suddenly the sentry's a little unguarded. Now it's just a numbers game, unfortunately, as Shin has too much. No overcharge as it was used to try and save that Archon. And again, those Immortals are only helping out so much. Shin will break on through. Very important scouts, really impactful delay on that third Nexus, and then we'll rally forward with a kill off of like a more 3-base setup than anything else, right? Because that wasn't a macro game. His fourth base was completing at Creator's own fourth base timing. Would have been really scary if it was a macro game. It wasn't. Shin, 64 drones, nonstop pumping of Ling and Hydras. I don't know why I keep thinking that he's going to go in macro hardcore, as he really doesn't have to, first of all, and he probably shouldn't, because all of his decisions in this game, in this series, have been good, and also that's just not really how he is. He's aggressive, so, and casting too much European StarCraft, obviously. So Shin, with a quick and easy 2-0 over Creator, will now face Maru in the winner's match. And we have the winner's match, guys. It's going to start off on site Delta, bottom right, Maru, top left, Shin. So, I'm going to bring up the stats because they're really, really dramatic. They're not great for building up hype, the stats. But they are really good for telling you just how difficult this matchup is for Shin. So that's why I'm doing it. But in their overall history, up until this series, which I don't know what happens, but I can guess. In their history, Maru is 58-11 in games and 27-1 in matches. So he's only ever lost to Shin once, and it was a best of one for a team league. And it wasn't even a very serious one, to be honest. It was a BJ destruction match, Team Maru versus Team Classic. So really what that means is Shin has never won against Maru in a best of 3 or above. Never. And not only has he not won against him, he very rarely wins individual games. So it's not like it's 2-1 every single time. It is often a clean sweep. And we will know, people who are in chat probably have watched a little more StarCraft, right, than the general population, that those sweeps are also really brutal sweeps. Okay, they're not 2-1s, they're not hotly contested, and then they're also individual games hardly contested. It's very brutal. It's very brutal. Every player, I think, has a player that they don't look forward to facing because they think or they know they have a losing history. Sometimes they think they do, but they actually don't. But there's always a player that someone is like, I really don't want to face this guy for whatever reason it is. Or maybe they even win against them most of the time, but they know it's going to be a really difficult and obnoxious time. They don't have any fun. Rarely does it get to be to this point, though, where it's been 10 years, and actually in 10 years they haven't faced that often, but it's been 10 years and you just don't win against them. I mean, the first time they played was back when GSTL was still happening. So yeah. But enough about the overall stats here, just to really paint the brutal picture, the very grim picture for Shin. To the builds, Maru did go for a 2 racks opener, going up to a total of 4 Reapers as well. That one additional Reaper is actually kind of tricky. That does add just enough DPS that the hatchery, which you assume has a certain amount of time given so that you can build your lings, get your queens over there, now suddenly has that little bit less time. And that actually can create a problem in which the hatchery is canceled. If they go up to 5 Reapers, and you don't have, like, your queens already on the way, and hopefully alive, you don't already have ling speed finishing, whatever, like, it is very, very dangerous. Now here we have Shin almost successfully getting us around without that speed, but almost is the key word. Now, the Lings do manage to buy some time for the Queens, 2 of them to get into a much better position to defend the hatchery, and that was really what Shin was going for. So, kudos to Shin for keeping a level head during that. Bringing both Queens, getting those Lings in a different direction so the Reapers couldn't just micro the best they could all damn day long, and then that speed is going to kick in because he wasn't greedy about it. Even though the 2 racks opener has fallen off, Site Delta was one that was a little more popular for it to begin with, and I think still remains to be the case. Maru is more inclined than some other Terrans to the 2 racks as well. You should probably be going for that kind of immediate 100 gas, immediate speed against this guy. Because if it's a, if you finish speed at 430 instead of 330, that hatchery probably is dead. But anyway, it's not. So Shin doing a good job deflecting the opener, but the opener dealing with the 3 or 4 or 5 Reapers, whatever it does happen to be, from the 2 racks is only one part of the problem. There is a chance that everything goes so terribly wrong you just lose to a 2 racks. That is not proxy, that is the Reaper version, and that feels bad, but it happens. But oftentimes, it's not about that, right? It's about the follow-up and the real trickiness of the follow-up. Is it a 5 or 4 racks? Is it a 2-1-1? Is it Banshees? Is it 3CC? I don't know. And so Shin will not know. He will continue not knowing. That Overlord dies with the lift of the factory. If Hellions haven't been produced, there is no fear of Lings trying to get in there. He didn't just immediately go into Marine production, in which case a lowered supply depot is a little sketch. Nope. 4 Hellions will protect you from almost every Ling threat. Banshees are also on the way, which is why I brought them up. It is a third CC, but nonetheless into Banshees. And then we have Bio. Good old Bio on the way. So it's not particularly aggressive as a follow-up. It's not all that tricky as a follow-up. We do have Shin, keeping in mind all of the possibilities. It could be a Liberator, it could be a Banshee, it could be a 2-1-1. And so 2-1-1 would probably be the worst case for Spore Crawler building. You'd wish you didn't have them most of the time. But for Liberator and Banshees, obviously Spore Crawler is going to be very helpful. So good thing that Shin does have them. You can see that they're kind of a little bit more in like an anti-Liberator position, honestly, but still helps against Banshees. But the Banshees are going to also help Maru feel very safe at home. Shin certainly showed his aggressiveness in the ZVP matchup, can also be aggressive in ZVT. Not usually kind of as on the nose, I guess maybe is the right phrase, as ZVP, right? ZVP kind of feels like you're watching someone wind up a hammer. And you're like, oh god, here comes the wind up, here comes the wind up. Okay, there's the wind up. Oh shit, he's attacking me. ZVT, it's usually a little less of like, oh god, here it comes. He's going to attack me. Unless it's roaches. In which case, it's a kind of the same thing where it's like, oh shit, it's roaches. He could be building up to hit me with a 1-1 roach all in. With Lings, you don't usually have that kind of very obvious, this is the trigger pull of an all-in. But you can get very aggressive with a low number of drones with pure Ling Bangling. We actually saw quite a bit of that from Raynor or a couple of Zergs in general against Clem. Seemed to be Clem's weakness for a little bit. But that is not what Shin is doing. Shin is trying to get to a very strong position with Ling Banelings Hydra. Gets 5 drones killed, but does kill the Banshee, so tit for tat, kind of. One Banshee was all that was created, actually, despite also investing into Cloak, which is a little unusual. But it is what it is, and kind of makes the math a little weird, I guess, on the drones and Banshees killed situation, but that will mean that it's one less Banshee to help out defensively as far as spotting run-bys or just simply being there for a defense. Probably won't matter, though. Probably will not matter. I'm gonna be honest, as a caster in this situation with this type of history between two players, I do kind of already just assume Maru is going to win. I mean, Maru could be down 50 SEDs, and I'd be like, well, I don't know. So, and he's not. He's doing totally fine. Gets a cancel on a 5th hatchery. It is a cancel. It is a 5th. Not the worst thing in the world, I suppose. But now he's going to jump up into that main base and be annoying while, of course, building an actual army back at home. This is just the drop. A little awkward on the Marine pickup, but most of the Marines will live to see another day. We do have what looks to be more of the main push. Yes, he is actually bringing his tanks and his Marines down to the south. Still a relatively small squad with the Hellbats added in that makes up for maybe a lack of Marines because so many are obviously still 2 drops. Hydras will be created. They are on the way, but there is a lack of creep spread to this 4th base, isn't there? I do not like how many creep tumors are on the 4th base. Only just now getting creep tumors over to that. That's not the best feeling. That Shin at least has something to work with. And the tanks are taking a very defensive posturing for an attack. That's a bit of a weird sentence, but this is more harassment. Now, it could spiral into something worse. So the Zerg player can't just go like, the tanks aren't near me. I don't have to deal with this. It's fine. Yeah, you can't do that. But for right now, your critical infrastructure is not being hit, and that is certainly not the worst army to take care of. But it's going to get worse. It is going to get worse. More units will rally forward, especially because this is a really easy place to rally to. And he had the drops also come back as they weren't finding much effectiveness on the right side. So then you have suddenly a tank on the low ground. And the siege hop happens. And suddenly that hatchery is in a lot of trouble. So the opportunity to nip this in the bud, it's long gone. And Shin is going to have a lot of trouble against this. But he's trying to get everything that he possibly can. If he can get maxed, he might have a chance to take this on. If he can go for a run-by, he might dislodge it. And that is currently his plan. Big ol' run-by prepared to hit that natural and 3rd base. Now, Maru is very aware of the possibility here. He's got a tank siege up in the 3rd. Lots of Marines and a tank in the natural. And this run-by has been completely deflected. That's always a bit of a sore spot, right? Because, okay, great, the Terran did the thing they're supposed to. Good for you, Terran. Blah. But then, on the other hand, that meant that they had a lot of reinforcements that weren't actually here. If you had decided to go for the pincer maneuver and just tried to collapse in on the Terran, you might have won. So many units are still back at home. But now, well, he is actually still going to be able to do it, and 2 tanks are on siege, so this actually still turns out pretty good for Shin. This is actually a really good time to go for the attack. Nonetheless, Baneling's off of creep, kind of rolling into tank fire. Certainly not the best trade, and it's actually getting worse. Shin thought he had cleared things up and then was also being attacked elsewhere and thought that he could leave. He really couldn't have. Loses the 5th, loses the 4th, and he lost way more than I thought he would, collapsing in on that because of that, he didn't finish. He left a lot left over in the, I don't know, the Greek yogurt cup or whatever, right? He actually did not finish dealing with that. And that sucks because that just means that everything went to shit. You know, like it seemed actually it was inevitable that these hatcheries are going to be canceled and killed because he had no idea that there was an attack on the way over there. He had no information that the army had moved that direction. So, it is what it is, right? But at the very least, he could have had, the best bop of the army over here that he could have, and he actually didn't. And now Maru is back on this location. By the way, also 4th CC, working on a 5th CC, 3-3 on the way, while also having just killed 2 of Shin's hatcheries. So that's, it's a bit more disappointing. I mean, Shin is still almost maxed out with some good upgrades, high technology, but it is very annoying that he didn't get to clean that up as well as he could have. Once again, you can see just the fact that it's off of creep means those tanks have so many opportunities to get kills on the Banelings. So many Banelings sacrificed to try and clear this up. At least some of the medevacs get killed before everything evacuates, so Shin can still say that he's doing something in return, but it is a very difficult game for him. Fortunately enough, Banelings left over to defend the attempt to rush into the natural, but this is still very concerning because Shin has not really moved on to anything good here, right? He doesn't have a really amazing defensive macro position in which he has 6 bases, 100 drones, nor does he have any type of run-bys really doing any damage. He doesn't have a lot of map presence or map control or map scouting even, as he keeps getting surprised by the right side, and he doesn't have any hive technology. The first couple of Vipers are on the way to help out perhaps against the medevacs, which wouldn't be too bad, but no lurkers. And even if he did get to lurkers, we'd already have ghosts on the way as well. So Maru is in a really good position, has recently lost a decent number of units, however, and almost flies right into the awaiting arms of the Hydras, but will be able to evacuate. So Maru's supply does dip down. Momentum has been lost a little bit, but nonetheless, Maru in a very, very, very good position. Shin managing to hold on to 4 bases, barely getting up to his 5th finally, has used up, I think, a lot of the, I call them like backup resources. You can only stay on 4 bases in StarCraft 2 for so long. That's what I'm trying to get at. So, it's great that he's been able to trade out. And let's see the trades actually. 3,000 resource difference. CVT is what it is. And that he's been able to keep his head above water. But he's only able to do that for so long. And the fact that he's had no pushback on the Terran means that the Terran really, it's up to them to lose control here. It's up to them to be overly aggressive or not have good enough macro. Constantly expanding and getting production and whatnot to lose the game. And that's just not likely to happen when you're talking about Maru. He is once again maxed out with Ghost, with 3-3 and slightly off of creep as well. Still going to be pushed back, but the Ghost should survive. I don't think they'll be picked up in those medevacs. Way too injured medevacs, and actually even dying, but the Ghost will survive as Maru just pulls back and back and back into more static defense. Also really nice tank position on the high ground. The Viper didn't expect that and did not have an abduct for it. Yeah, 3-3 haven't been done for a while at this point. Only +3 carapace for Shin. Still not able to work quite on the +3 attacks. +3 melee halfway done. No adrenal glands and no more missile attack either. Ultras are the goal here though, so that makes sense as far as the missile goes. But he needs that chitinous plating to finish. He would love that +3 melee to finish. And cracklings do seem to have been forgotten. You see a lot of Zerg players actually prioritize crackling over anything else, so that's why I'm confident in saying that it's forgotten. More pressure on this angle here. Maru without any splash, however, is going to get overwhelmed. Once again, though, able to save the Ghost, and that, as we know, is the most important thing. Ghost expensive, they're slow building, and their critical mass is kind of important. You can rebuild the bio, certainly, over time. And the tanks, they are still being produced. They don't seem to be helping us much in the last couple of minutes. They're still there, I guess. They're still able to be produced again. Most important thing is the Ghosts are holding the line. And very consistent production. Very good macro. Is keeping Maru on the in the winning lead, right? Even if this game looks like it's been kind of even. Like Shin's had a chance. Shin's attacked into the army and pushed it back. And he's gotten his bases up and running. He's gotten a hive tech. Like why is he in trouble? Because he has so little of the map. The Terran player is expanding more aggressively than the Zerg. And that is always a dangerous thing because they're expanding into you. Now this is a promising attack into the planetary. You can see SCV's going down. Ghosts are on the run, now actually captured by the Lings. It's actually the most promising situation so far. As soon as I was talking about Maru expanding into his opponent. But it is not going to end the game. As we see, Shin is also going to have trouble replacing a lot of these units while he's doing a lot of damage, and that looks so freaking amazing. There's still so many units from Maru coming out every which way, killing some of these very expensive units that Shin simply cannot replace. So many of his minerals are now gone from his main, natural, and third base. And he was not anywhere close to camping the production. He killed a couple of important bases. Well, one important base, sorry, literally one important base, but he did not get into the production, and even some of these ghosts did end up surviving, so that was not good enough. It is great if the Zerg player had the ideal position that I was talking about, if they had the map, if they had 7 bases and 95 drones, and they took an attack like that, they're instantly remaxing, and they're probably going to win, actually, with Maru's supply dipping to 130 and the remax of the Terran being so much slower. But Shin was not in that position. He needed that to be almost a game-winning move, actually. That was his last chance, and it is now gone. So you see who is remaxing faster? The Terran player. They just have so many consistent resources coming in, as Shin lost that healthy base in the corner, and only recently, I think, got this base here, the triangle base, saturated. So Shin just not doing so hot here. Obviously, Maru also has mules, so mules pretty good. Yeah. I was going to say, those ghosts playing very dangerous game. Only one snipe went off, but the hatchery does go down. And the tanks are still so obnoxiously positioned that they are safe without the units protecting them. And the units have a safe place to drop back to. Shin finally finding some money with the saturated triangle base. Another base up to the top right. Still such limited vision to this side, however. And, you know, there have been so few attempts to get on Maru's side of the map because Shin has been under so much pressure. Only now finally getting over there. Tanks that were left alone, actually, the Bio Army had just completely disregarded those tanks. The Lings do take the opportunity to jump on top of that. That is very good. 3 tanks killed. Gonna take that for a couple of Lings, yeah, for sure. But still not a devastating blow to Maru. Also, still no adrenal glands. It's gotta be a mistake. I know he's still strapped for cash, but it is such a good upgrade. Banelings trying to go into the planetary will successfully get the complete detonation, and that is something. But I actually don't know if that was really worth it. Shin, again, not a 95 drone, 6 base player. Needs those Banelings to help. Although maybe it's a game over no matter what, because I don't know how much 15 extra Banelings would have helped right here as we see the Zerg army get totally, completely ripped apart. Even the surrounds on a couple of Marauders to the north didn't even kill them. Medivacs are healing through it. Fungals not coming with enough supporting units, and that is that. Maru does take 18.5 minutes to defeat Shin, but he does to further his lead in their head-to-head. In the bottom left of Alcyone, we do have Maru up 1. In the top right, we do have Shin, who, you know, I don't think always gets totally beaten by Maru. You know, I painted a grim picture because it is grim to start off the series, and a lot of their games are not pretty. Having cast a semifinal between the two, it wasn't pretty. But it's not like he just dies to everything. It's not like Shin just gets 6 Hellions on the face and dies. And he looks like a Gold League player, you know? I mean, Shin can fight like he did in the last game, but I think if you watch enough StarCraft, you can just tell that he is the one being oppressed by Maru in all of the games. I think that's the real problem, is that the amount of games in which Shin has not felt like he was the one that was under pressure and up against the Titan and up against his nemesis, you know, the guy he can never beat. Like, it doesn't really seem to ever happen. Maybe there are a couple of games in which he is legitimately winning and looking as confident and as, you know, take control as he does versus other players and in other matchups. There probably are a couple of those types of games versus Maru with him, but they don't happen a lot. Even if he manages to play a 20-plus minute game versus the guy, it usually is still just Maru being the oppressive force clearly doing things a little bit better than the other guy. And not many of the attempts to throw a wrench into things work for Shin. Because that's usually what's going to happen. I mean, a lot of Terrans can get into a similar position in which they can't quite kill the Zerg, but they're doing a lot of things really well. Their macro's going really well. Their micro's going really well. Their map control is going really well. They're kind of winning those resource trades like they should be. Fantastic. But then the wrench gets thrown into things. You know, Rainier will go for a Ling run by and suddenly everything goes to shit. And that also doesn't seem to happen a lot for Shin versus Maru specifically. I'll find that opportunity so many other times versus so many other Terran players, but not versus Maru. So the problem, though, is that I think that Shin is very much capable of knowing what he should be doing against the guy, and he's displayed really good ZVT against a lot of other very good Terrans. But when it comes to Maru, it seems like no matter what he does, it does not seem to get him an edge. And if that chance comes around in which he does get an edge, and you're like, oh my god, is it finally time for Shin to beat Maru? It feels like the gods work against him. And I'm like, nope, not today. Not ever. Sorry, man. So you gotta really feel for Shin, who is a fine player, can be a little hit or miss on days, but certainly even shown to be, one of the best in some of these world championships. And then Maru is just an immovable force. And you're like, oh, cool. So I just can't kill this guy? That's awesome. Amaro's gone for a 2 racks once again. No 4th Reaper this time around. That can sometimes be a bit of like not a skill check, a greed check. Yeah, it can be a greed check sometimes, that 4th or 5th Reaper. How late is your speed, kind of. But this time around, only 3 Reapers, and into the 3rd CC once again. We'll see if the follow-up is identical with the single Banshee and Cloak. Shin not aware of the follow-up, as always, that is the difficult part. Difficult aspect of the 2 racks is the scouting follow-up. You see that it's a factor at the very least with your Overlord and their decision to place the factory there so they can swap it off. They could try and hide it and create even more hesitation from the Zerg, but then they wouldn't be able to add on to the reactor. But other than that, you don't know. The starport could be up next, or it could have been a 3rd CC. And for all you know, this could turn into like a Hellbat thing, I guess, as well. If you see that they're still producing Hellions, that takes away the really fast and sharp 2-1-1 option, right? But then maybe it's a Hellbat attack, so you still got to be concerned. It is just the maybe 4 Hellions once again, as Maru goes for one of the greediest builds you can, actually, behind a 2 racks. The 2 racks covers you to a certain extent, actually really quite good at covering you against cheeses because you can usually scout them, and Reapers are good at buying time. But besides that, this is probably one of the greediest things you can do. He went 2-1, 3 CC into 2 engineering bays before starport, before additional production. So his upgrades are going to be blazing fast. I mean, absurdly fast. No way Shin, even if he was going for a quick double evolution chamber, they would be able to match that. But his production is a little low right now. Maru would be maybe vulnerable to a Ling, Baneling, Roach, Ravager all in, but that's not what Shin is doing. So Shin just playing, well, like his middle of the road, I guess, but very safe game. He's got his lair on the way. He's got a good number of Lings. Make sure the Hellions don't run past his queens and kill him. And he does have a Baneling nest on the way, so that if he needs Banelings, he can make them. But he is getting so outpaced in this game. It's kind of crazy. Just because, again, Maru's on such a greedy build. Which I think means that his first attack is going to be at 6.5 minutes. Yeah, he's got 2 medevacs about to pop, but not 16 Marines. He might still immediately go with the medevacs, of course. Yeah, it's not the biggest attack, yeah. So, not the biggest attack. About 6.5 minutes if he goes straight to the main. And so Shin will have no problem with the first attack, and he might not have a problem with the second attack. But when the push-out happens with tanks, much like last game, you're going to start to feel a lot of the pressure. Especially if you can't nip it in the bud. Medevacs do reveal themselves to an Overlord. Just drop out the Marines, get that kill. Shin goes for the 4th hatchery to the right side after mining out the mineral wall. And with the queens and lings here, this really shouldn't get a whole lot, but already 1 queen going down, 2nd one in trouble. Transfuses having to be used, and that is something. Less transfuses for later, less creep tumors as well as the scan comes in with the Hellions. No Hellbats to help out, and no Banelings were created despite that faster Baneling nest. Shin figured he didn't need it, and I don't blame him for that. Trying to get that greed as a Zerg player, get that bag. But unfortunately, with the Hellbats added into even only 11 Marines on the front line, we see how much trouble Shin is having without those Banelings. Medivacs being targeted, but kind of inconsistently mean that they will evacuate once again with most of the Marines. Hellbats give up their lives for the greater good, take down so many Banelings in the process, and Maru has found a decent amount of pressure there. Now, Shin has held on, and actually Shin held on with a really nice drone count as well, so he got those drones fit in before he started to have some trouble. But nonetheless, he is having trouble. All this creep spread still being stopped short of helping out his 3rd base is a real scary aspect right now. Because while it would be expected to go over to the 4th base where there are still creep tumors spreading some creep, it actually would not be crazy, in my opinion, if the Terran really did just push this angle. There's so little creep spread, and it's such an obnoxious angle of which you only have 2 angles of attack as the Zerg, and they're both down chokes and ramps. So I think Shin is aware that could happen, and he knows that the lack of creep spread is going to be a potential problem. Having to handle the double drop off to the left side, he is not out on the map, finding these units maybe a little under-defended. Nope, Maru's attack is just getting built up in the middle. 3cc obviously has been down for a while. No 4th CC as of yet. Actually, oh my goodness, because it is an 8 racks. It is an 8 racks. Wow, all right then. So bringing back a bit of an oldie but goodie, the 8 racks that at one point in time really was basically an all-in. You know, like if you didn't win with 8 racks and 3cc, you just left the game. But nowadays, if you do an 8 racks prior to a 4th CC, it is usually prior to a 4th CC. You will get the 4th CC. Biggest problem with that is that the 4th CC is heavily delayed and there's no 2nd factory. But right now, it is an 8 racks, and the 8 racks is going to provide a lot of consistent pressure. Shin makes one wrong move with the amount of Banelings that he retains, and he is dead. That is the real kicker to defending these pushes. You need to have those Banelings always in your pocket to stop those Marines from getting the idea they can jump on top of you. And the lack of creep spread really is problematic. Maru is pushing this angle. Shin knew that it was probably going to happen, but he can only do so much to make up for the lost creep tumors. And now his army is also coming through its own man-made chokes. Like his own SimCity is working against him. And there's not many other angles that he can come in that is going to be really all that great. Even if Shin tried to go for a full surround, it's a lot off of creep. That's a lot of space that the Terran has to move its own units. And plus they could pick up. I mean, in worst case scenario. That is a decent number of medivacs. Shin is on the ropes in a very difficult position. Not many Zerg players are going to be able to wiggle themselves out of this one. He is going to try and go for at least a bit of a reinforcement cutoff. I think he found 1 tank, if I'm not mistaken, but here comes an attempted swell off of creep. Marines were pulled back a little bit late, so some connections are going down. Tanks not sieged up completely, and actually Maru did kind of get bamboozled a little bit there. Maybe not bamboozled is not the right word, but he got kind of torn right there. So he went to go deal with the like run by / reinforcement interception team. He kind of like knew that the attack could come, so he had his units off of creep, but they're still really, really bunched up. And they were in that really nice concave that makes it really easy to pull back groups of Marines. His tanks were sieged up, and so that actually ended up being a really good bust out from Shin. That could have been way uglier, I think. That was actually one of the uglier engagements for Maru, as we expect really big things from him, I would say, in his career. That might have been one of the uglier ones. But it's not so ugly that he loses the game, of course. He is now in a bit of a pickle because his 4th CC is so late, and that was such a complete stop on his momentum. I mean, that really stopped him completely. So that is a pickle. 4th CC is late. 2nd factory is non-existent. Upgrades are still good, especially because he had such fast upgrades. But he does not have the solid setup like last game. The last game was a lot of pushing through to slowly but steadily build up your game win. You couldn't quite kill the guy, but you were pushing steadily ahead beyond what they were. This game should be kind of the opposite. You know, Shin should have an opportunity in which he's able to bust out once again with the help of Vipers, and then maybe get a little more of that map control. But Maru's back on it. Maru has brought in a couple of Liberators as well. 4 tanks. Not bad, despite having only 1 factory worth of production. And Shin is not ready to go on the field with his Vipers. He is still found defensively choked up in his own Sim City. So that is still good for Maru, who was going to try and rally forth. Once again, Shin's little hit squad trying to stop that from happening, trying to buy some time as well. Shin's hatchery is going to go down. Very unfortunate. The queen's not around to try and get those transfuses, if he even has any additional queens. Maybe they all are sacrificed. I think he's only using them for inject, which is actually kind of problematic. They're really good at handling the, well, I don't know about really good, but they can help out against the Liberators. The Hydras don't want to put their vulnerable selves on the front lines. And they can take a lot of shots from the tank, too. And just, obviously, they can transfuse, which may have been helpful on some of those Vipers who got shut down very quickly. They managed to get a couple of their spells off, maybe not enough, as the Marines do pull back off of creep through the gold-based choke. And that was the much more effective, clean type of engagement where Maru was clearly in control from minute 0, from second 0, because he had his eyes on those Vipers to get the snipe, and he still had the time to pull back those Marines. So he, that time around, wasn't caught by surprise, like the last engagement. And it actually looks like Shin is going to die to the follow-up pressure. He never got on the field fast enough. His Vipers weren't there, already abducting, already blinding, clouding to get him prepared. He just couldn't get situated, even though he also did get, well, almost maxed out. I think he was at 190. Even though he also was almost maxed out, and he also did have Vipers, it was all last second. It was all when Maru was already ready to go for round number 2. And he was never very comfortable. And that is that. Maru goes for the 2-0. 2-1-2-0 wins, and will advance forward into the round of 8 of GSL. We are into the losers match, or the elimination match, if that makes you feel better. In the top left of site Delta, it is Creator. And in the bottom right, we do have TY. So TY lost to Maru 2-1, or 1-2 in his situation. His game win was a very, very end-game TVT, which I think does still play to his strengths. So he won that one, which is great. But he did lose maybe the slightly more typical TVTs, particularly the T-Unix. But TVT remains his strongest. Even though he lost versus Maru, most people lose versus Maru. I would say it's still his strongest. He's now facing a Protoss player. And this is where I just shrug, honestly. I know in my gut instinct is that as a guy who's kind of almost even retired, like he said he wasn't really going to do this anymore, but then qualified, so of course he's going to try. I just don't know if he's going to have more consistent results at the very least than a guy like Creator, who has been doing this all the time. I'm certain he's gone through highs and lows as far as his dedication to practice and all that, just as it is. But usually very much an emotional and very motivated player when it comes to competition. So I think he's playing more consistently. Only StarCraft 2 as well, where TY splits his time with Brood War. And then, yeah, it's just... I feel like this means more to him sometimes. Sometimes it also feels like he's just not feeling it that particular season. But yeah, then for TY, he's always a competitor, always wants to win, but he has been splitting his time a little bit and has had his doubts about continuing with this particular career. Anyway, regardless of that, I also think that this means that Creator is going to be a little more on top of the TVP aspect, PVT in his case, as compared to TY, who I will always say gets to really play to his strengths in TVT because the matchup has remained similar in StarCraft 2 over the last 14 years, and even has a lot of similarities with the Brood War TVT, particularly when you play that mech style and when you get into the mid to late game. So that makes sense. TY does well there. But TVP is a completely different beast. Certainly from Brood War TVP, but of course TY doesn't only play Brood War. He knows what he's doing in TVP and StarCraft 2 as well, but it might not be as practiced as Creator's PVT is all I'm saying. But then you also got to throw into that mix of, excuses and reasonings and all that. You got to throw into the mix there that there's also perhaps a balance issue. Now, there might not be an actual balance issue. You guys can discuss that as much as you want, but certainly some people think that there is. So, he's one of those people, creator, sometimes, and particularly in this matchup, so that's why I'm bringing it up. Creator sometimes doesn't look like he's having the most fun, but he is always willing to experiment, and he's willing to really try his damnness in a matchup that sometimes he does say isn't favorable to Protoss. Let's put it that way. So, I don't know exactly where I land. I've actually kind of explained all angles of these things, but I think my gut instinct, like I said, I kind of think Creator is more likely to win. But TY, if there is one thing that he's always been very good at, is when it comes to prepared tournaments, like a GSL. He is very good at coming up with strategies and seeing the weakness in his opponent. And that is exactly what he's doing here. So he's gone for a 1-1-1 on Site Delta, which can be a very good and very popular map for tank pushes, and that seems to be what he's doing right now. So throw that into there as well, and it is possible that Creator still gets bopped by a good old-fashioned tank push. It is possible. I don't think it's going to happen here, because Creator is going for a 4-gate, which I actually think is a really good move. It gives you a lot of defensive potential if you are forced to use it defensively. Obviously, it means to be aggressive, but then if you don't use it defensively, you still get to be aggressive with it, and there's not really a Terran build that automatically wins against the 4-gate. So there are better builds against the 4-gate. There are better Terran defenses against the 4-gate. 4-gates can fail. But I think that as far as facing TY, the kind of like half and half Brood War StarCraft 2 guy, the guy that kind of, you know, maybe wants to retire, maybe he doesn't practice StarCraft 2 as much, blah, 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 blah. 4-gate's probably a good way to go. You're going to have some production to help you out against some of the earlier attacks, although not the earliest attacks, but the earlier ones, like a tank push. And you are also going to potentially just kill a guy who can't have the perfect defense of a Clem, for instance. So let's see what happens. Push is on the way for TY, but he doesn't know that he's pushing into a 4-gate. He didn't even see there was a Twilight Council. He has no idea. Excuse me. And while the 4-gate doesn't win maybe right off the bat, its production will eventually. And actually, the sacrifice of a stalker for a tank there, amazing. It actually could have sacrificed 2 stalkers, so it would have been amazing. Because we're going to have a lot of stalkers in this game. We are not going to have a lot of tanks. And if TY loses his tanks and loses this push, he loses the game. He will not have enough back at home to hold on against the 4-gate, of which at this point he must know. He must know this is a 4-gate. That is too many stalkers. What the hell does he have back at home? He has 1 tank. He starts up his 2nd tank production as Creator now gets into position once again. Warp Prism still alive. Plenty of Stalkers still alive. He lost 4 Stalkers in exchange for that and an Adept, I guess. And a couple of probes, actually. To the Liberator harassment, which I totally did not see. He'll lose another Stalker as well. But Creator thinks he can win the game. And I don't think he's wrong. But that is a very aggressive blink into the tank, into the Marines, into the auto turret, as well as the SEV pool. And that wasn't the end of the game that he was hoping for, but cutting the tank count down is often what leads to the end of the game for the 4-gate player. So we'll see if that happens here. Creator finally dealt with that Liberator, although it did kill quite a few probes. Warp Prism pickup on the Stalkers is really nice, and Creator's Stalker count has certainly dwindled. Not that critical mass that can just go ahead and sweep over all of the reinforcements of the Terran. Viking and Marines getting some shots off on the Warp Prism. Warp Prism going to go down with 2 Stalkers in tow. And, wow. This 4-gate really did not work out at all, actually. Like, I feel like it worked out very much as planned when it came to defending the tank push, and then the counterattack was very much supposed to be scary. I will not withdraw my casting on those particular points. But I will say that that blink in probably wasn't worth killing the tank. That seems to have been where things really went to shit. Too many Stalkers were injured, too many extra Stalkers were killed, Bunker was able to complete, Marines actually in it, obviously, and more production in the main was allowed to happen. And Creator just could not get that game-winning moment that he was hoping for. And then when you're only using 4 Stalkers in one place and 4 Stalkers in another place, that's not going to win a game. Might kill a couple of SCVs and Marines, but... And then the Warp Prism dies. I mean, that went to shit really quickly. So, does this mean that TY has recovered? Does it mean that he's in the lead again? Does it mean he's going to win? He probably should, if everything goes according to plan from here on out. He's got 3 CC, he's got more workers than the Protoss has probes. That's not a good thing for the Protoss. His stim and combat shields are only just really getting on board right now, so that is the one thing that is missing, but they will be adding into a already good number of bio and medevacs. So it's still okay, I think. But Crater is doing probably the most powerful follow-up that he can in that kind of weird position, because he really did delay the third Nexus. It's already going to be delayed just because it's a 4-gate. But then he also did dedicate to the 4-gate. He had to defend the tank push first, and then he thought he could go for the attack. So that was pretty delayed. But now that it's up and running with all 6 gases, he can afford maybe a decent amount of High Templars, and then just charge lots, right? Charge and High Templars. Not a whole lot of Stalkers, except the ones that you retained from the earlier attack. That hopefully buys some time. Take down some of the air units, perhaps. Warp Prism remade is definitely a good addition. As we saw, it killed 6 SCVs and did distract a little bit, but TY not ready to move out yet anyway. And it's, I think, really is about whether or not these storms hit the heart of the army or not. That is the kicker about the storm play. TY has a 20, 30 almost army supply lead. He has upgrades. Creator does not. And he is finally ready to go. We also could have an anti-armor missile, which is really going to take the power out of already weakened zealots, because they don't have +1 armor, and TY has his weapons. So it is literally all down to whether the storms are amazing. It's a very marine-based army right now, so the storms could be really, really, really good. No feedback, unfortunate. It is going to be painted orange there, the Protoss army, but Creator does take a forward stance to try and give him time to evacuate and regroup. It kind of works out to an extent. Force fields do buy some time, and only the Marines able to slip through mean that they are very vulnerable to getting stormed. And the Raven just sat there. Is the Raven really going to get a second shot? Oh my god, it will! Does an anti-armor missile a lot of units, to be fair, but it is now dead. Warp Prism holding a couple of storms, never forget that. So the tanks are in position, and not going to focus fire on the High Templar, plus Protoss army coming in from the south as well. And this is a really good collapse in there for Creator. He had actually gotten so much extra time since that storm even finished as an upgrade to add in quite a few zealots. Coming in from different angles was also very much key, and TY is now on the run. His macro also slipped something fierce. Way worse than you would have seen years ago when he was a GSL champion. That is just bad. I mean, not to be too harsh, but that is certainly one of the reasons that he is struggling to defend here, because imagine if he had an extra 1,000 minerals able to help defend as he retreated, right? He retreats, he goes back to 1,000 extra minerals worth of units. Probably isn't as bad. 1,000 extra minerals also would have gone into a Ghost Academy. Not that the Ghost would have been quite prepared at this point. But it does seem like TY is going to lose this game. I said he'd probably, you know, maybe supposed to win if everything had gone according to plan post 4-gate defense. But everything did not go according to plan. And like I said, Creator probably went for the best mix-up strategy beyond that. If he had gone into Colossus, I think that would have been way too easy for the TY to handle, especially with the Raven. Although he didn't research Matrix, to be fair, but still. And if he had gone into just pure gateway units, he also would have been overrun. Storm was really the best choice, and Storm Zealots did the job. Creator, with the great start to the losers bracket match. It's kind of a bracket anyway. TY does have his last life coming up. Game 2 is going to be on Oceanborn. Bottom right, down 1, he's TY. And the top left, we do have Creator. So the game goes, I think, into a really good position for Creator, and then into a questionable position for Creator, and then into a really, really good one for Creator. Creator overall, I think, able to display why I believe he would be better. I think his dedicated practice, and I think he has tried to figure out the PvT problem as well, so he's probably dedicated practice the matchup too. I think it really shows in a game like that, in which he's also one of the players who has practiced a lot with that Storm follow-up too. So I think he kind of got to play like a lot of things that he would typically play, and it favored him because of the TY tank push. You know, sometimes you'd face a Terran player with the same build that he did, 4-gate into Storm, but then the Terran player would obviously play very differently. They wouldn't go for the tank push. They would have a rock-solid defense and very few units lost in the defense of the 4-gate, and then they would do a very powerful follow-up and probably retain more units and also macro better. I'm not saying his macro is what killed him exactly, but it didn't help. And so the game would look very different, and Creator might even lose. But, you know, TY did lose out on an initial group of units so that the defense of the 4 gate was questionable, but it worked out. That was fine. Maybe because of creative decision making, maybe not. But he did lose that group of units. He lost 2 tanks and however many Marines from the get-go, which means that he has to build 2 more tanks to really feel safe, which might not actually be all that helpful for when you do eventually push out to deal with a zealot-heavy player. Whereas maybe if you had played a non-tank push, you had just done some scouting, saw that it was a 4 gate, went, okay, 2 tanks, maybe a 3rd, just be careful, a couple of bunkers, totally prepared. Then you might have actually just already swapped into some Widowmine production, which would have been better off, and maybe just had more of a streamlined push. Because Crater is kind of thrown off almost no matter what, just the 4 gate does throw you off. But then TY also kind of had a thrown off situation in which he did a tank push first. The SCV scout will come in this time around, and if he sees it as a Twilight Council, I'll give him some indication, but it doesn't stick around, actually. Obviously, the Adept is going to pop out and try and kill it, but it's possible the SCV sticks around long enough to see that. Nope, not this time around. The SCV might still die anyway, too. Probably will. But you know what it's doing? It's distracting TY. No, distracting Creator. And now the Adept gets to the front of the Natural a little bit later. And now the Shade has already been used into the Natural. Oh, he did see the Reapers. Okay. I was going to say maybe the Reapers can then jump on top of the Adept. Kind of catch it off guard. But they're going to try and circumvent the Adept entirely, which was another choice. They weren't able to. And they actually will not get the Adept either. TY wanted to circumvent the Adept first, realized he couldn't. Then the Adept actually did get the Shade back off of cooldown. Kind of feels like there was 2 opportunities and both were missed for TY, who went for a bit of a surprising follow-up. He went for a, well, not even follow-up. It's the first thing he did, really. He went for a surprising opener with Reacted Reaper. Now, Reapers will not do as well versus Stalker. Really nice grenade, but the Adept Shade will still kill one of the Reapers. These 2 Marines on the hunt for what could have been the Adept still chilling. Still looking for some scouting. You know, if you leave the Adept here, it might be able to scout a Liberator or Medevac flying over it. Or just continue throwing its Shade into the Natural, which we all know is very annoying. Doesn't do that. Doesn't find the Adept, because the Adept wasn't there. Now the Adept is paired up with a Sister. And, they feel a little more comfortable doing that Adept Shade into the Natural. They can only ever be so comfortable, though. Why are the SCVs moving out? I don't know. Looks like a misrally to me. Either a misrally, or he was really scared of something, which I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's either a misrally or like a fake. But then he pulled the SCVs back, so I don't know. Regardless, we got Blink on the way for Creator. 3 gate this time, not 4 gate. Did I ever actually count the number of gateways last game? I just assumed it was a 4 gate, actually. Anyway, it's a 3 gate. We'll see if Creator goes for a much faster Nexus this game. Which I actually think he absolutely is. The probe's already there, 400 minerals, yep. Yeah, 100%. So, you know, now you can really pick and choose how you want to follow this up, as opposed to feeling kind of stuck in the 4 gate because your Nexus is so delayed. And it will be, well, first and foremost, an Immortal. He doesn't know what his opponent is doing. He has seen no factory units and no starport units. It's been a 3 racks. Good old-fashioned 3 racks. Now, this was maybe something Creator was kind of picking up on. And the Widowmine drop, no tank push, no tank defense either. No Widowmine that could be going into a medevac, nothing like that, right? So he might have already been figuring out that it was a 3 racks, but now it is confirmed. TY not wanting to pop a stim right there to take on the Stalkers, knowing they'll just blink away and be picked up. And the farther away he stims from his Natural, the more likely his units get picked off on the retreat. So, actually pretty smart there from TY. Really nice trigger discipline, if you will. And he also segmented a couple of Marines off to try and circumvent the Stalkers. Try and get in that 3rd base and kill some probes. Really nicely done, actually. Very smart. Taking the threat of the potential 4 gate, because he doesn't know if it's 3 or 4. Very seriously, with the 2 bunkers already up. No way the Stalkers break through that, nor do they want to. Unfortunately for the Marines, they could have gotten maybe 5 probes in the third. They tried to dive into the natural. And they get some scouting, I guess, but that's pretty much all they get. Colossus is on the way, as we do have a fairly normal game in charge as well. Oopsie-daisy, little late maybe? Nope, actually going to be good. I thought the War Prism was going to be a goner, but no. Creator paying attention in the nick of time. Will save all of his units, and that second stim there further injured many of TY's units. Medivacs are going to be on the way, but them to already be half drained of energy is not ideal. And a single adept left behind stops at 3rd CC. Creator does feel like he's really playing out a very disciplined game, I guess. You know, he's doing everything, I think, quite right. Not taking any unnecessary aggressive maneuvers, which I would call that blink in last game. One of the moves that made me question if he was actually going to do all right past it, but he was fine. But now this is a very typical, just kind of read the situation. Oh gosh, he's going for a 3 racks. Got to be careful about that. Okay, I've defended it. I'm doing all right. Calmly into Colossus. Calmly into 3-base saturation. And actually kind of a faster Dark Shrine, but mostly very normal PvT. War Prism is still alive, although some of the Stalkers were finally caught sleeping. 3rd CC finally on the way as well, as it was delayed. And the supplies are currently even. Infantry weapons will finish up first, but we have a Forge this time around for Creator, and it is going to probably finish up +1 before the attack really happens. No Raven, no Interference Matrix. That Colossus is key. Second Colossus is out now as I speak. And Extended Thermal Lance will probably also be done by the time the attack happens. It's a little close, but TY is actually trying to posture right now. He's got an army off to the right, army off to the left. Great hallucination. Really like these hallucinations. He doesn't have anything else to scout this angle of attack, while also worrying about this angle of attack and this angle of attack. His adept is scouting and his DTs are harassing. He actually has no vision over here to his natural, which you can see he's concerned about the possibility of a drop. So he has units, but it's actually TY completely evacuating, deciding that there is no good avenue of attack, which might have worked out well for him if he actually was defending. The DTs are actually going to hit him, and they are hitting him. Did he realize that? I don't think he realized that. Missile turret was on the front, so maybe he was hoping that would stop the DT, but yeah, it has to use a scan. All right, that didn't turn out as poorly as I thought it was. I thought Terran Army initially defensive, great versus DTs, right? They're going to be in position to kill the DTs, but then it looked like the army was about to move out of position, and now we're good. DTs showing themselves a fairly fast DT harassment play. Jig is up now. So now you're going to have the Terran player more on guard against those things. So that's kind of a bummer, just as far as how fast he dedicated to it. Didn't really work out. But obviously, as the game goes into more of a mid-game here, 4 bases set up for the Protoss, you know, a couple of DTs in a unsuccessful harassment attempt isn't the worst thing. War Prism apparently died as well, though. Big old drop into the natural. Creator was wary of this, and his units weren't that far out of position. No shield battery to help out, but perhaps he does not need it. I don't think he does. One of mine actually was a questionable splash, maybe affected the Terran more so. One medevac full of units gets shot down by the Blink Stalkers, and TY's drop into the natural. Overall, very unsuccessful. DT also being warped in to help defensively is a nice touch, because if it's one DT with a lot of other sounds, then it's very possible the Terran doesn't realize a DT is swiping away. And Creator does an excellent job defending. He knew that he had a problem. Protoss have a problem which they're producing from the Robo. They can't just have a bajillion observers, so they know that there's a couple of angles that can be abused. They could drop, they could push, they could push, they could push, or even drop up to the very, very north is there as well. And so they have to try and keep track of everything. Kind of difficult. And you can see, finally, TY getting some success in the natural. Catches 2 Immortals, handful of Stalkers perhaps, but will also maybe lose his own units. And he's got his skedaddle. Okay, yeah, he's actually fine. So that was a good one. That was a great drop. What am I? Okay, we're good. And of course, now it is the new patch. So what am I? We need Drilling Claws to actually be hidden. Oh, that's not. Oh no, the armory is hidden. Wait, no, I have to double check that. So we can't actually. Oh, because it's loaded. That's right. They never actually shot. The Stalkers kept, kept avoiding it. There we go. Yeah, so now you need drilling claws to actually get the cloak. But there we go. And that's going to be a little more important when it comes to clearing up this minefield. This minefield, combined with the missile turret, if you just got the default cloak on the Widow Mines because of an armory, it's actually really annoying for the Protoss. But in this case, it's going to eventually be able to clear everything up, and that is a very big Protoss army bearing down on the production of TY. An admirable shield body overcharge, not sure for what. That's a decent amount of Terran army, but not nearly as much as what Creator has. Creator has a 50 army supply lead. He is losing some of his own production. No disruptor shots will try and help him out here, so it will just go down to, I mean, maybe an actual base race. I think that is TY's best chance at winning this game, because he's not going to win in a head-to-head. So his best chance is actually kill every last building of Creator. Not an impossible feat, but Recall is available. Dark Templars are on the field, 3 of them before that Dark Shrine gets killed, and we are running out of scans. No Raven on the field. Scan actually is in the air currently, so that's a problem. So many army units that just really are going to have such an ineffective fight, they might as well not be here. It's going to make the army supply difference even more drastic as this gets cleaned up, no problem whatsoever. Main Nexus goes down. Natural Nexus went down. Third Nexus went down, but we still have a 4th and a 5th being built. And again, that recall can come in at any time. As Creator really doesn't have to play around. He doesn't have to risk a potential base race loss. He could be back at home defending a budding production line, but it looks like TY knows that he really doesn't have a shot. So Creator never has to use the recall, does win the game, win the series 2-0, and TY is out of the GSL. Creator will have one last chance to make it to the round of 8 by taking on Shin in a rematch. So we have a rematch for the decider here. In the bottom left, we have Creator, who lost 0-2, versus this man in the top right, Shin, in their preliminary match. Shin with some aggressive tactics in the first game for certain. Kind of just swelled off of that mid-60-ish drone. 3 base more so. Economy. And kind of swept Creator. What the hell? Hello. And then Creator tried to do something really sneaky in the second game, which I think is totally fine. Definitely try it. But it was scouted. And when the double Stargate Phoenix is scouted and they have time to prepare, and worse, they have time to attack you. They're like, well, what Phoenix doesn't deal with? Lings! And they build Lings. That makes it really troublesome. So it was kind of a meh best of 3 for Creator. But things are getting real spicy right off the bat. We'll see if Creator gets thrown off by this, because our expectation, even though this is no longer in the meta, hasn't been for years, this proxy hatch, or the block hatch actually, really, even back when it was in the meta and it occasionally straight up killed a Protoss, it was oftentimes to just disrupt them. The Protoss, first minutes in the game, very tight. They got to worry about their lack of units. They got to worry about building the wall against the Zerg. And so taking probes off of a line to deal with a hatcher to do that, I mean, that literally can open up other problems. So you want to know what they're following up with, obviously. This is why the probe's over here. Getting a full-on scout into the main because it can, and it needs to. So you don't want to have further problems in case this was like an early pull alongside this. And then you also don't want to accidentally mess up your build order, If you're a little late to this MX core, and then you're a little late to your second pylon, and then you realize, oh no, I didn't want that, I wanted my Nexus faster, it can get kind of obnoxious. But professional Protosses don't really ever have that problem anymore, I would say. Every so often, especially if the Zerg player is really insistent on a block hatch, so they block hatch, Evo chamber, and then block hatch again, they're crazy. Sometimes a Protoss can be thrown off, even if they're a professional. But it's usually not the case. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, assuming that Creator doesn't just temporarily forget how to do this and how to keep his mind on track against the smallest form of aggression possible, this usually isn't worth it, I would say, for a Zerg player, I think. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons that it doesn't get done anymore. Because there was a time where it was very in meta, and there was a time where Rogue was really even going very aggressive with these things. He was always doing some type of Ling Rush or Roach Rush or Spinecrawler Rush. But in terms of just the block hatch, I feel like there was also a time in which it was just an excuse for the Zerg players to mess with the Protoss. And they're like, gotcha! I'm fine with this. Are you fine with that? I don't know. I feel like that time's long gone as well. But it's always nice to mix things in, isn't it? It's always good to mix things in. Shin kind of gets a little bit of a gotcha to begin with. Not totally, because that was handled very, very well. Very appropriate amount of probes to out DPS the hatchery, or identical DPS the hatchery health building. And the Zealot pops out, and then it out DPSs the hatchery. Then a temporary block on the gas. That is maybe the most annoying part of this, actually. The Protoss needs that gas lickety-split. But then that's also dealt with pretty quickly. And with the scout from the probe seeing that it wasn't a fast pool, he knows that he didn't really have to panic, get up the wall. So it's almost like nothing happened, actually. So we have the Oracle on the way. Wall is up. The only thing you can really tell is weird about this game, I guess, is that a Zealot is out. Why did I be able to Zealot? I don't have to do that anymore. Anywho, drones are on the way. Spore crawlers are on the way. Shin doesn't know that's a Stargate. Oh, he does. Just kidding. He knows that it's a Stargate, even if he didn't. It's a good guess. 10 Lings. That Zealot. Hello? Oh, that Overlord of obviously seeing everything. That's unfortunate timing there for a Creator who, well, he's going to bring the Zealot forward, actually. Oh, that's so unfortunate. He's clearly going to handle it. He's going to deal with this. The Lings will die. It's not the worst thing in the world because the Nexus was kept intact. But that is really annoying. Because all he had to do, I think, was get the Oracle to the Overlord. Get the Oracle over here to see the Overlord is spotting him, because he knows that. He knows the Overlord's spotting him. But then the Oracle also would have been there to help zap the Lings as soon as possible. Instead, he loses the Stalker in the depth for almost no contention, and then the Lings die. It's just the little things, you know? And Shin can be very good with the little annoyances against everyone besides Maru. Now it's Creator's turn to try and get something done. He got a couple of creep tumors last time he tried to do the Adept Oracle, not touching you type of harassment. And this time, not even going to get the creep tumors. Oracle's already swooping into the main base. Want to also get some scouting done. Unlikely to get more than one drone, I would say. Yeah, two drones. And then the second Oracle didn't zap with the first one, so only 2 drones. A handful of Lings heading over to the third Nexus, but 3 Adepts are there, 2 Sentries as well, and some nice Sim City as everything is all tucked in nice and neat. Oracle also kept at home. Overlord Speed is on the way here, and I do wonder... Nope, that jet... Overlord Speed not on the way. Just kidding. He was thinking of it, though. Or he misclicked, either way. A lot of gas coming up right now. 6 gases. Almost all saturated. I don't think that's a fake. I'm actually pretty sure as we see a Spire come down, but that might just be a mistake. All right, well, the Oracle, I think that's kind of like a sacrificial Oracle to try and actually get scouting. You know, leaving its buddy behind and then just going right through the middle of the bases. It does survive. And it does, oh my god, it actually scouted the Spire. Okay, way to go, Oracle. That Oracle actually scouted the Spire. You know, sometimes the trickiest place to put something you want to hide is right there in the open. Our instinct is like, well, put it behind the mineral lines. Well, an Oracle will clearly see that. And you can put it in the creep spread on the main or right there, and oftentimes the Oracle can't get close enough to scout that. The Queens are on its tail. Really nicely done from Creator. And now he's actually going to try and push before that Spire has anything to do with this game. But it is already invested into. So 200 invested into that. Maybe resources are being banked up as well. And now need to be used ASAP for army production. Now this is a very non-committal attack from Creator. This isn't the attack that he's been building up towards. If it was, Shin might have been screwed. If this was a real 3-base attack. But it's not. It's a kind of poke that actually starts turning a little sour. Lings come from behind, get us around. Nice corrosive bows on the Immortal, but the Immortal will survive. Gets recalled to the third Nexus, which just have 1 shield better, but not anything more. And while Shin obviously was thinking going for that Spire play, has now totally disregarded that. He let the Spire finish, but he's actually moving on to an Infestation Pit. He uses the momentum of his army to get that cancel on the 4th, kills an Oracle as well, and will threaten the 3rd, but it's a similar situation to what Creator just did, which is it's an army that is out on the map to go boo, but doesn't really want to, it's not being reinforced. It's not going to all-in off of this. Shin's 4th base has been up for a little while. 84 drones at this point. 5th base at the gold, obviously. Infestation pit now moving on to a hive. Hydralistan, lurkers in the near future. And the Spire could be a threat, which is why Creator is making Phoenix. But oh, hold on here. We got another surround with the Lings. Immortal Hover going to survive again, thanks to the help of the Shield Body Overcharge. So Shin saw an opportunity. Good of him to keep sharking around. Didn't quite get to slam dunk that one, you know. Blocked by the Shield Battery. So I think 5 Phoenix is where Creator's going to stop. It is sucky as a Protoss player to know that the Zerg player has these options of technology and they don't have to use it necessarily. I mean, 200 Spire not being used can be a real bummer, but at the end of the day, this is moving on from that. And so it is kind of a bummer that Creator has to be so concerned over it because he knows that he can't really deal with mutas if it is mutas with a Stalker defense. You know, there's no blink. So gotta get the Phoenix. They're not the most terrible unit to have if they aren't being used against the mutas, but not exactly ideal either. No scout in the hive, but I think... I mean, Creator, if he's capable, you know, he's not just rushing around trying to do everything at once that StarCraft 2 demands. If he's able to think through a little bit, you know, would probably be thinking, he hasn't done anything, he hasn't done anything, he hasn't done anything. Are there 50 mutas being held up at your base? Or is there a hive? And it is going to be a hive. So the Phoenix finally scout that. Hive, Hydra. What's the most common thing from that? Lurkers. He knows that lurkers are going to be on the way. That is going to be the nearest problem. Closest problem in his future. His 4th base finally gets up and running. That was heavily delayed. First, it was canceled, and then he didn't want to get it back up and running because he wanted to be concerned about what he had to fight against. He didn't know what he was up against. So now that he has a better idea, you know, 4th base certainly obviously has to come down. Rich Vespasian Geyser as well, a little oversaturated too. But he's got a mothership on the way and carriers too. So he's already moving over into air despite only having 1 Stargate. Let's see if he can actually get to enough capital ships to be worth it. You know, 1 carrier pops out, not going to help out too much. Those Hydras will just rip the interceptors to shreds. That is a concerning number of lurkers. Inching ever closer to his 4th base. Opening up further pathways. Their range is done. The speed burrow is on the way. The Vipers are sharking around for any good abducts as we don't have any High Templars for the feedbacks. And what are they going to abduct? The Immortals? All of the Immortals. All of the Immortals. All 4 of them. Getting way too close for comfort with those lurkers. And Creator is going to just accept that. He has nothing to do. He's like, all right then. Great. And those Immortals would actually be helpful if they could have gotten a concave with their barrier on some of these lurkers, but not going to be the case. Now it's all up to the Sky Toss. Mothership does arrive, gets the cloaking field activated. But is that going to be enough? Corrosive Biles get the injured Mothership, at the very least, get some injuries on it, but it is really about the lurkers, of which a Mothership is not quite helping yet, but maybe it doesn't need to be helping. Phoenix come in to help out as well. Uproot some of those lurkers out of the ground, into the air, get the kills, and Creator is actually going to be able to hold on. Really nicely done. Came in from so many different directions, and the Phoenix just crowd controlling 3 lurkers, I think, at a time. And getting the kills, too. Like, that's really nice. Now, Shin has a decent amount of bank. Had. Now is completely reinforced and remaxed, but without lurkers. Lurkers require time, so it's only the Hydras. Abduct will come down alongside a Parasitic Bomb, both very effective against the air units. But Creator still wants to push on through. I don't know if that's actually a great idea. His army just simply not able to tackle the Hydras that were available. There was nothing that really burned through the Hydras so much. The Immortals aren't anti-Hydra, they're anti-Roach or anti-Lurker. Not a lot of Stalkers, not a whole lot of Charge Lots. No Storms, no Colossus. So, unfortunately, might have been a little too gung-ho in his attempt to retaliate. Shin was able to remax just so freaking fast with really good units, like almost all Hydras. Creator was not able to get a counterattack after defending the Lurkers, and so Shin is once again maxed out with some Lurkers in his pocket. Now, Creator isn't that far from being maxed either, so it's not the worst case scenario, but basically, Anytime lurkers are on your side of the map is a bad scenario. And that is a lot of lurkers. Once again, up to 8. Not as many, but now they're also with a lot of Hydras and Lings. 2-1 upgrades for the Zerg. 2 attack on the ground for Creator. Only 1 in the sky, and just not enough carriers to really be tackling this at this point in time. Roba going to go down, which also means no more observers. I don't see any observers on the field right now, actually. Oracle had to be created to take care of that. Creator, forced to go into a very desperate situation, is going to go for the base trade. Probably the best possible scenario. Hopefully get on top of a lot of the reinforcements and make sure no defensive lurkers get up and running, as he does not have scouting, he doesn't have observation. So that would be a real problem. So far, so good. Catching a lot of the reinforcements, catching a lot of the technology, killing a lot of the economy as well. And we just don't have a lot of the Protoss units going down. But ditto. On the other side of the map, we have Creator losing access to all of his technology, all of his production. Very few Zerg units have died. They broke through without much defense and have just taken control over the Protoss army. It's tit for tat right now. It's a full-on base trade. Everyone trying to get as much damage done as possible before having to regroup. Before finally deciding to recall or come back home or whatever happens. Some lurkers did manage to form in the just corner of the map. Oracle sniped down, but not before it got the revelation, and Phoenix once again helping the crowd control. Drones pulled in desperately to an Archon, not a good idea. Creator, though, needs to regroup his units because Shin is on the way back home, and he does not have detection. No Oracle, no Observer. What does he do about these lurkers? He doesn't have a Stargate anymore, does he? It's not powered. It's got a carrier. He needs to get a probe over here and power it and get some revelations going, or he is screwed. I mean, I guess he could try and win with pure carrier. He has 1,700 minerals in the bank, so interceptor production isn't necessarily a problem. But can he defeat these Hydras? The Hydras have 1 carapace and against 1 attack, so they're actually doing pretty well there. And they're even getting a couple of units before the recall goes through. A carrier went down, a Phoenix went down, and Shin has a 30 army supply lead. Actually, I would say that lurkers might not have been the problem. Didn't have to be the problem, I guess, in a kind of a weird way to put it, but they didn't have to be the problem if Creator had actually gotten to enough carriers, right? Then it's just a matter of killing the Hydras, and then it's kind of weird, because then the carriers can't kill the lurkers without the detection, but the lurkers can't really jump on top of the bases here because there are cannons at the very least. So you'd have like a stalemate, I guess, for a while. But the Hydras are doing their job against the carriers. Make it 6 carriers with +2 weapons, and it's a little more questionable. Unfortunately, didn't get that far. 1 carrier actually still stuck here, finally getting the repowering going. And, actually, he chronoed it, that's funny. He's got the repowering going, he's got some additional gateways coming down as well. He did have a decent amount of bank. He's had that in production, so the resources have always been locked into that Stargate. So he is going to finish the carrier probably before building an Oracle. Because, I'd still say seeing the lurkers is better than not. All right? If your ultimate goal is trying to win out the air game, that's great, but you probably still want to see the lurkers. Storm is available. I think the High Templars are... Yes, they do have a Storm. Every single one of them. Shield Body Overcharge. Not gonna save the... Oh, I'm gonna save the Archon. Saves an Archon. The base is a goner. Lurkers got up and close and personal, and yeah, gonna kill it. No problem. Usually at this point, for lurkers, it could be an issue of getting up and close, even with speed burrow. Maybe they go, like, one of them gets killed before they burrow, but nope, they are just running on through, and Creator, I think, has made the accurate assessment so that he will not be able to kill this, especially because he still doesn't have detection. No Observer, no Oracle. I'm reminding myself of that, because I feel like I'm missing him. I'm like, there's got to be something somewhere, and there's not. Creator never built it, and now he's supply blocked, so he can't build an Oracle, although he has the resources. Shin kills a 3rd base, and a 4th. That's all of the bases, actually, for Creator killed. Okay, so he's actually on his last life. Fantastic. Creator has not rebuilt his base. He's being revealed. There is a 2nd win condition here for Shin. He could actually just try and kill all the buildings. But instead, he is going to try and chase after the army. The army chasing after drones currently. Shin not in a much better position, mind you. Only has 2 hatcheries alive, but it's better than what Creator's got. Shin actually is, could mine and get more minerals for more hatcheries. Or decide not to. He's actually deciding to spend all of his money into every last Hydra possible, which might be the right call. Holy shit, that's a good storm. That is a good storm. So many weakened Hydras, but not quite dead. That is the problem. The storm didn't kill the bastards. And the lurkers still not being detected. I mean, that's just it, right? 2 carriers, not enough to take on the number of Hydras that are available. And Creator is going to be losing this game, no doubt about it. There's maybe a little question mark 2 minutes ago, but now it is a period. It is the end of the sentence. Although the storms are coming down every which way they possibly can. Many of the Hydras did die. And the carriers do have... No, one of them has all their interceptors. Sorry. Only one. Okay. Those storms were pretty good. Those storms killed a lot of the Hydras. And again, the lurkers can't shoot up. So there's that. I love that the probes are trying to help. Oh, that's the carrier with all the interceptors. Yep, that's it. That's dead. He's dead. Yeah. If there weren't any abducts, then he could have tried to, like, hang on the side and focus fire each Hydra. But the Hydras would have never, like, gone to attack the carrier, right? They would have always stayed around a spore crawler, so, yeah. Okay, yeah, so Creator was dead. That is game, and Shin is now 1 game away from advancing in the GSL. And so, we have game 2. With this man up 1, it is Shin. On the top left, we have Creator. So, Creator gave it his all, man. Gave it his all, but it's not the first time that he's gotten into a really dicey situation with the Zerg and his desperate attempts to, you know, do the best thing possible in a worse situation. So base race, basically, did not go according to plan. It is the best situation he can make, but there have been a lot of disappointing losses for Creator in that type of game, actually. I feel like a lot of the times we see him get really emotional. He's in some of these base race TVZs, PVZs. But anywho, you know, he's done a really good job of at least not letting that impact him throughout a string of games. That's really the most important thing. Get mad, cry, shout, break your keyboard all you want, whatever you want to do. Not that he's done all of that, but he's done some of that. But then, you know, get yourself ready for the next game. And Creator's usually pretty good at that. You can definitely see when his emotions get a little too in control of him. But I would actually say that I think his problem with emotions is not that when he feels disappointed or sad, or when he realizes he's going to lose, he just deflates. That's not actually it. I think actually some of his problems come down to when he thinks he's winning. I feel like there's been a couple of GSL games, or just, you know, any tournament games anyway, where Creator gets really, really gung-ho. You know, I was at a GSL game in Korea last year, so I guess that's why it's sticking out in my brain. But he actually was kind of making his comeback happening, and arguably was even in the lead against some Zerg player, maybe Dark, I don't remember. But then he got so excited. He was like literally yelling because he knew that he was coming back and he was ready to go, that he blinked into lurkers or something like that, and he just died. So anyway, I think that's actually his problem, is that sometimes his emotions make him lose in games that he's actually already doing pretty well in. As far as how many times I've witnessed him just completely unravel in a best of series because he had a disappointing loss, actually not that often. And the last poor base trade for him that I remember is actually the game 5 of him versus Dark at Katowice, in which it was game 5 and, you know, it kind of sucks. So, but you can be as emotional as you want after that. Twilight Council's on the way, so enough about Creator's emotions. We all love it. I'm not trying to make this sound bad or anything, and everyone is affected by their emotions to a certain extent. He just lets it show on his face so we know for a fact it's happening. We got Twilight Council all the way for Creator. Robo as well. Creator, what are you doing? Shin is going to realize that it is going to be a Twilight Council opener once again. I think it was Oceanborn. I think we got some multi-layered strategy going down here between the best ofs. But I believe it was Oceanborn in which he went for a Stalker opener after Adept, which he has done in this game, and then went for double Stargate. So now he's changed it up. He's showing that something weird is happening. There's a Stalker, not a bunch of Adepts. Where's your third Nexus? Why isn't the Oracle flying across right now? But Shin doesn't actually know what it is 100%. Now he's got an Overlord that could try and sneak in through the backside here and might actually get a glimpse of the Twilight Council. But it's hard to say. Shin might as well try, though. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's actually so much dead space over there. Oh. Forget about it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that Overlord that was actually positioned in the north in the last series is now, once again, in a great position, this time to the west. That Stalker had no idea it was on the way. Even if it did, I'm not sure it could shoot from right there. And now the Overlord will certainly die, but it will have gotten the Scout. Now, the Scout comes in just second... No! Okay, well, he doesn't see the Twilight Council researching, so that should be enough information. Okay, it is. Good. All right, so Spore Crawlers are on the way. I was so concerned for a second, but no, he knows. He knows 100% what it is. Spore Crawlers are on the way. If he's got units in position, then it's fine. Yeah. Anyway, so Creator goes for a very old-fashioned build. One that doesn't seem to work nearly as often anymore. The DTs haven't killed anyone in a long time. Though I think I still see occasionally them killing a hatchery, which almost effectively kills the Zerg, but not always. But then the follow-up, you know, what kind of made the DTs okay, even if the DTs themselves didn't do all that much damage, that's what's really not been as good since it was the meta. Since Zest was doing it every single game. Is that the follow-up would be kind of nice because you get a little scouting, a little map control, pretty good defensively as well. 2 Archons and a War Prism, right? Can hold against a lot of things. And, you know, there's a chance that the Archons actually did a decent amount of damage. 20 Lings, 5 Drones, 2 Queens, a couple of Creep Tumors. But it feels like that isn't really the case. Gone the same way as the 2-base 2-1-1, which is that technically it's an okay build. Anyone not professional could use it and be totally good with it. Some unique professional players can still do it and be good with it. But for the most part, you're not really going to get as much as you would want. And so the Zerg players have just adapted too well to it and streamlined their builds too well against it. See if that's the case in this game. I mean, Creator chose the build that he did. Went for a little bit of a attempted gotcha move with the kind of trickery between the best ofs and the attempt to hide it as well, which did not work. But didn't work out. So now you're stuck with the follow-up, which is decent enough. I mean, you can still play this follow-up to an extent in which you win the game. I'm not saying he's dead. And here we go. Spire is on the way, this time in the back of the mineral line because there aren't any oracles. And the Warp Prism is definitely not going to be so courageous as to get back there, especially with the Spore Crawler well positioned. A couple of Lings try and get the sentries. Not going to happen with the shield battery. No news on the Creator side of the map. But I am looking first and foremost at that Spire. Creator just does not know about it. He sees a spawning pool. He sees 2 gases. He hasn't checked the 4th in a little bit. I mean, he really has no idea. Blink is fortunately on the way. That is a first step to defending. But recall that this is a Twilight Council. There is absolutely no chance to get into Phoenix. So that actually creates a problem for the Protoss beyond just the problem of not realizing mutas are on the way. First, the surprise is a problem, of course. But the second thing is that if they went into mass muta, there is a chance that it would go into a forced base race in which a Protoss, I feel like, is unlikely to win. Perhaps some anti-Zerg bias right there. But yeah, when Blink is the only option you have against a muta player, you can get into a very desperate feeling very fast. But Shin is not actually playing into mutas. He went for a handful of mutas to get the surprise and go and get the gotcha moment. Creator had some stag defense on the way just because it was around that time. He was, again, going into stalkers already, but this was not going into mutas. The Creator was up against someone who was going up to 20 or even 30 mutas with +1 and then +2 on the way. He would eventually be forced into that all-in situation, which, I mean, I say the Protoss is unlikely to win just because it feels like that's what I've seen whenever it's happened, but it's not always the case, right? Sometimes they do manage to keep a couple of Archons at home, push with a couple of Archons, and win. So Shin doesn't want to play that game, doesn't want to play that late game, that forced base race. Although he is now building a couple extra mutas. Still likes the control they give him, I guess. But is going into a lot of the ground army. Also finally getting both ground upgrades. +2 is on the way for Creator as he grabs a 4th Nexus. And we have ourselves a ZVP. One in which Creator is totally found position. He has on a current 3-loss streak. Lost the previous best of 3 against Shin 2-0. So now it is about mentality as well as about the actual game. Muta's trying once again to dive in. They're actually seemingly less effective with more mutas than they were with the first run through, so that's not great. And the Stalkers will not get one more, but that's alright. Really not the most important thing here. The mutas were not focused on. For Creator, I think he also has realized that, right? Might be a little shocked to see that there were 5 more mutas, but it still isn't a muta game. So he knows that more so than the mutas harassing his probes as a threat, it is the threat of being caught out of position. And a gigantic Ling, Baneling, Roach, Ravager army taking advantage of you scrambling around trying to deal with the mutas. That is far more of a concern, I would say. Fortunately, there is an observer that has yet to be caught out. That is seeing at least one attack path, although not all of them. Shin could go over to the left side and try and, go unscouted, but Creator is aware of the possibility. He's got a Zealot to the left, Zealot, Adept to the right, and Observer down the middle. The mutas are still alive, but again, they're really... The best thing they can do at this point is distract. Maybe clear up a Warp Prism in the future as well. The Creator has done his duty as a Protoss player. He has defended against any potential attacks, gotten his 4 bases, and has a very, very good army that is going to have +2 attack with 10 Archons, good lord, 5 Immortals, and however much else, I'm not even sure matters. That is just a very powerful armor right there. Shin has his Ling, Baneling, Roach, Ravager. That's fantastic, but he doesn't have any of those additional upgrades on them quite yet. Adrenal Glands, not done. +2 melee, not done. No missile upgrades at all. Ultraless Cavern. I'm not even sure if the Ultras were done and Chitinous Plating was done, if you would actually want to go for Ultras. Maybe as a remax, but right now he is already maxed out. So Creator knows that he could still potentially lose a battle if he gets surrounded and Lizard remaxes, and then he gets surrounded again. It's probably how he would lose the battle, but he knows that it's possible, so he is being very careful. Trying to make sure that he's only being attacked from one angle. Warp Prism is safe, and not all of his units are coming in at once. Now they are, but the Zealots are still actually behind the Archons, which are tanking all of the Banelings, but there are just so freaking many. Creator is forced to split a little bit, which opens up opportunities for the Roach Ravager to try and take on some of these Archons, but here comes the rest of the Protoss army. The army that had retreated away from the Banelings now comes forward, still with 5 Archons, still with a handful of Zealots, still with the Warp Prism, which is really the devastating thing there. And while Shin is remaxing, it is with Ultras that are going to be without Chitinous Plating and running into some pretty still good anti-Ultra Protoss armies. A lot of Stalkers, a couple of Immortals. I think it's really all you're going to need against a couple of Ultras. Only 4 of them without their armor. Don't think they're the biggest threat, but they could still add in to an overall maxed out Zerg army, and maybe Creator doesn't win with this particular push. But I think he knows that it is a good chance that he does. He is not going to evacuate. He is going to stand his ground. Stalkers blink away from the Ultras. Chitinous Plating still not done. There we go. Finally finishes up. Archons tackled on the left side. Stalkers able to focus fire on the right. Warp Prism is actually juggling some of those important units off to the left side, but the Colossus will go down, the Immortal will go down, and the Stalkers will have to skedaddle without the splash damage. Take down these Lings. Those Lings are quite a problem because Cracklings had also finished at some point in this battle. Creator, you could argue that he overstayed his welcome because the entire Protoss army is now dead, but then look at the supplies. Shin, not in that much better of a situation. Failed attempt to recall, so Creator could have at least something to go back home with. It's a bit of a bummer, but he does still have some mining. He does still have some reinforcements, and he does still have very microable units. And now we're in a very low unit scenario for both parties. This is where Stalkers are really going to shine. Ditto on the Lings, however. Lings are also freaking good in this situation if they can get this around. That's exactly what they're trying to go for. But uh-oh, no Overseer, and the DTs come back, man. They barely did anything in the beginning of the game, but now they're here for the later stages, and they do help out. 9 probes go down, but all 4 Nexus will live. Shin on 5 bases, 62 drones himself, still has that superior economy, but not by that much. Going into Infestors and Neural Parasite, trying to find out some of these really very efficient resources. And spellcasters are going to be very efficient on these low economy games. Something that Creator doesn't really have a lot of. Spellcasters, that is. He did not get a Templar Archives, and he does a Dark Shrine for Archons, I guess, but he's got no Storm. And Storm actually could be probably really useful here. But either way, he's going to try and retain his units. The Stalkers do get partially surrounded. They really need those Archons there to help them out. My worry right now is that Shin will be able to surround the Stalkers with the Lings and then get the Neural Parasite on the Archons. And then that's, you know, that's all of Creator's army, actually. That's my worry right now. Neural Parasite with 6 Infestors could be absolutely devastating. Not going to get caught out without an Overseer again in this game, probably. Oh, he's made that mistake once. Shame on you. Yeah. Happens twice. Shame on me. There we go. I like that Burrow's being added in. It is kind of a chunk of change, I guess, in what is still a relatively low econ scenario, but we do have Shin, 64 drones, 2 healthy bases mining. I think it's worthwhile. Stalker's not being microed because we do have Banelings rolling on in. Nice little force field on the cannon, and also to guard the probes. Things have certainly calmed down. Zerg player, unsurprisingly, remaxing faster, but not at a pace that makes you feel like they're inevitably going to win. If they instantly remax after a scrappy battle like that, well, Protoss might be screwed. But a 60-ish army supply lead in this matchup when the units are kind of basic. There are some ultras in here. Pretty normal, really, for the Protoss to defend, as long as the Protoss also has their high-tech, good quality units. And that is exactly what Creator has again. He's got 6 Archons, 2 Immortals, and his Stalkers are trying to be on the forefront to get that heads up. He never really got a lot of upgrades, it's kind of a bummer, but one upgrade he did get was the shields. Very, very helpful for when you're really dependent on these Archons. Shin also not going for too many more upgrades. Does have 2 Carapace about to finish, but not going to take this fight. That is not the... He didn't mean to take a fight. He has a lot of his actual army back at home, which he also now knows, with the Overseer being a part of his army, is not being seen. There's also kind of a little bit of a mind game going on, I guess, right here, which is that Creator can't get a lot of information as to what the Zerg is doing. And that's a very fearful place to be. He knows that a hatchery is being put down, but he can't do anything about it. What if another hatchery's over to the right side too, and this guy had 5,000 minerals and has expanded every which way? The best thing you can do as a Protoss is defend, and then hope that the Zerg player exhausts themselves and show a weakness, I would say. Until you get some form of scouting. So Warp Prism, harassment, or any type of harassment would also be some of that scouting, right? But even hallucinations could be useful just to get a grasp on the true scale of the game. How many drones are we talking about? How many bases are we talking about? What is the army composition? Because, for instance, he has no idea that there are that many infestors on the field. They are burrowed now, so hallucination wouldn't be enough. And that would still really suck if that ends up killing him. Shin, even though he maxed out much quicker than his opponents, did not pull the trigger, did not go for the big major attack, was still very cautious against a Protoss who was able to rebuild an Archon count and able to go back home and defend with all that SimCity and defender's advantage. Should he have tried to push in? Maybe. But, you know, for a Zerg player, they would really like to have a bank before they really decide to start trying to hammer a Protoss, win with the consistent waves of units. And Shin didn't have that much of a bank until, well, now, basically. And he's also going to try and add on the biggest technology of them all, a game-winning technology, should it actually arrive, and that is the Broodlord. Creator certainly doesn't have it within him to go into Stargates. He still does not have a Stargate. Start off this game with Twilight Council. And to try and tackle a Broodlord player with Archons and a limited number of Stalkers, historically doesn't go that well. Especially if Creator is so tucked into his bases. It's a little different if it's a little more of a attack left, attack right, attack in the middle, lots of different scuffles happening, but in this type of game, if suddenly 12 Broodlords showed up on the doorstep of Creator, he'd be in a lot of trouble. Still not Broodlords, though. Despite the Greater Spire, we still have no Corruptors. Shin was maxed out after all and does have to get rid of some of the supply, so Ling run by, gets into the main, isn't particularly effective. And an attack on the right side is attempted, but failed. Shin does get rid of a decent amount of supply, and should he want to, a couple of Corruptors could be made right now. But that is a tricky thing about the Zerg's perspective, is that whenever they start to trade out that army supply for something bigger and better, they know that they're also kind of revealing to the Protoss player, hey, I have given a certain amount of supply away, and if you push me, I might not be able to survive. Now, that is a chance you got to take. So Shin has got 11 Corruptors on the way, and ideally continues keeping Crater at home. Those Corruptors might pop, but they're not immediately turning into Brute Lords, and that's what he needs. Not only that, since they will be used defensively at this point, there is a possibility that Crater just spreads out his army and actually still does a ton of damage despite the Broodlord's presence. The Broodlords are creating right now. There's only 6 of them on the way. It's really not that impressive, as the supply is the problem. But here comes the Neuroparasites. Now, it's a lot more Protoss army than it used to be, so the Neuroparasites might not be enough, especially because so much of the Protoss army is off to the left side, just face-tanking 30 Banelings. Right to the face, and the Immortals did not give a fuck. So the Neuroparasite really did not help a lot. You had 5 Archons of the team of Shin attacking only a handful of units left over for Creator, and that wasn't exactly ideal. Shin is going to lose a base, not his most important one, and will lose a handful of his arm units as well. Of course, that was a trade, but Creator now gets to do what I was saying, which is maybe just run around, avoid the Broodlords. More Neuroparasites are coming in, and the Immortals are just tanking taking so many shots. Oh, God. Taking so many shots on the Stalkers. Oh, yeah. But the Stalkers actually just blink away from them. They blink away from the Immortals, into the Corruptors, into the Broodlords, into the Infestors, and they actually kill almost all of them. The Immortals let free once again to play for the right team this time around, and only a handful of Ultras independent of any other units. No Ling supporting them, no Fungal supporting them. Very easy for the Stalkers to take out one by one, and Shin is now rallying into a losing game. He's got a couple of Spine Crawlers on his 6th base, which maybe he was hoping would be also a place of defense. Maybe this is where the Broodlords could have been created, which are helping a little bit, but we still have so many Immortals. Creator now with the army supply lead. He is not doing so hot in the economy, but at this point, no one is. Once again, very low econ scenario. And we have not exactly a base race, actually. Shin is just losing back at home. But we had a scrappy ending to the game, and Creator will push through despite the Neuroparasites, which really did not pop off. That was not the most effective use of them. And Shin must know that he's in a lot of trouble. That is a very, very good Protoss army left over. Crackling's going to try and cause some disruption. You know, if he can get this base killed, then there's not a little mining for Creator. And if he had Fungal Broodlord, I'd actually give him a chance, even with a drastically lower army supply. But not going to be the case. Creator will finally get a game against Shin. And now we go to the last map of the GSL Group A. All right, last game, and it is on another one of these new maps. Another U-shaped map, but turned. In the 6 o'clock position, it is Shin, and in the 12 o'clock, it is Creator. And he just bottom left, but it just a little bit off, and I don't like it. I don't know. It's not even really 6 o'clock, I guess. It's like an 8 o'clock. Anyways, in the bottom, it's Shin, and the top, it's Creator. There we go, nailed it. So, Amphion. I'm not even going to try and learn the map names this time, just as a middle finger to the map makers. So what we got here? It's been a while. I haven't checked out the new maps. So, mineral wall, some potential third, and then you got the low ground with the mixed minerals and the gold. You got the freaking U shape that's really weird. Got the forward position of the base. The rocks, and you got all this other shit that's going on over here. All right, cool. I'm up to speed now. We're good. So, Shin really thought he had something going there with the secret spire. The fact that he was able to hide that, knowing that the warp prism would not be able to get that scout, I thought was going to be way bigger than it was. And in fact, so much so that I am a little surprised that he didn't try and go full-on mutas. But as much as I do favor the Zerg position once they have that 30 muta plus 2 Ling Bane control over the Protoss who only has Stalkers, it's not like it's a de facto win. You don't just win because you got there. And all the process to get there is also questionable. So, I mean, I don't want to say that it would have been an easy win, but an unscouted Spire is one of the worst nightmares possible for a Protoss. That's where my perspective comes from, I guess, a little more Protoss-minded. Mostly Terran, though. I was like, what's the big deal with Mutas? Just build a Thor. Anyway. But that's, seemed a little underused. I wonder if Shin will go for all 3 games being a Spire game. And then, this might be the game that he actually does go mass Muta. Or not. I don't know. There is something to be said about going for air on a map that has what you can kind of call a close by air situation. Very old school terms no one uses anymore. But, with the way that the rocks are blocking and the minerals are blocking, it kind of makes it so that the entire left side of the map, base to base, isn't naturally covered, isn't naturally scouted or naturally protected. So there could be something there. Obviously the wall is way out here as well, which is actually really annoying. I have not been listening to the criticisms of the maps from the players. You guys can inform me, but I look at this, and actually, as a Protoss perspective, this is really very long way to go for the initial probe building production. Right? Like, this is an insane distance. And it might sound a little silly to, like, really hone in on, but have your probe missing from mining for that much extra longer, it does actually change their build order. As much as they already have the privilege of having a probe that instantly builds and then just leaves, right? That is something that would impact them. Now, when it comes down to the natural producing buildings here, that's not as problematic. Some maps in the past have actually also been really bad for Ling defenses because the Nexus and the mineral line is so far away from the front that it actually means it's like that extra second the probe isn't there to get the wall off. But I'm just talking about the first couple of buildings. Anywho, it's a very typical opener, so I guess I can talk about whatever I want. Stargate scouted, Oracle on the way. Don't know the expansion process for the Protoss, but the Zerg is just taking the right side third. Oracle going to find at least 1 drone. So the Oracle zipped right across that map. He was able to find some success, but plenty of dead space. Plenty of dead space. At least in the natural here, not so much in the main. Oh, unless that's all dead space. And then there's plenty. But that dead space, that corner, is actually less obnoxious than some other corners in this matchup. Sometimes the mineral line is like right here, so the corner is heavily abused by the Oracle or the Banshee or the Liberator or whatever. Not this time. Not this map. 2 Oracles already out, 3rd Oracle on the way. Robo coming out first after the Stargate. So that is a mix-up from his traditional opener. So he has gone triple Oracle, Twilight Council Forge, Stalkers, or Charge Archon. This time around going right into that Robo after the 3rd Nexus. Off to the right side, by the way. So the entirety of the left side of the map is not being used, is not, as I said, naturally scouted as far as the non-Zerg player goes. Clearly, Overlords can stay there. And so that's where I was figuring their abuse might lie. We'll see how the map goes, the more bases we get. Oracle's going to find a queen that they thought was a little too lonely. However, 1 Oracle dies, and not worth it. 1 Oracle for 1 queen. Scouting does come in on a evolution chamber. And the Oracles do tuck themselves into a corner in which they can't be attacked. So they might get some good scouting later. But it is later. Shin not really going for anything. Oh, 2 devastating right now. We do have Overlord speed. So last game, or the game before that. The game before that. There was an Overlord speed for a hot second. And then he canceled it immediately. But this time around, actually sticking with it. They got a lot of micro going down to these Oracles to get 2 drones. That's great. That's cool. But, oh, jeez Louise. Oh, no. That's going to die. Oh, it didn't die. I thought 2 queens could shoot it. Only 1 could. Anywho, what I was trying to say is that it's not scouting. It's not scouting. It actually is only seeing what it already knows, which is that it's a spawning pool. There's drones mining from the main and the natural. Hey, that's every Zerg player. It's not scouting, perhaps, the lack of drones of the 4th until just now. Or the 4th's not even done, actually. But it's not scouting the building army that's right there. I don't believe it saw the wiggly jiggly of the Overlord speed being researched, and things might get a little awkward. Now, Crater does know now, as the Oracles have passed by a handful of Lings, but I don't think he realized that the Roach Ravager was also there. Quick recall to try and save the day, but he is once again a little too late to the defenses. Reminiscent of the first best of 3 that they played, bringing back the Ling Roach Ravager attack with the Queen drop to help out. This time around, force fields do come down, but they are limited in time. Corrosive Biles do exist. However, that little bit of time, the shield battery overcharge actually being active, not targeted down, was huge. The Queens all fall before killing all of the Oracles, and this is a much better hold, despite, once again, being late to the SAG defense. This is a drastically different hold compared to that first best of 3, but is it going to be enough? Nice lift save on the Immortal. Very well done there from Creator with that one Phoenix. Why does he even have it? I don't know. But it just saved an Immortal, who also manages to escape out of the Corrosive Bile. Finally goes down, but hell, that was a challenge there for Shin, who's also now rallying with Pure Ling. That could be enough if there was just, you know, only Stalkers or only like 3 Stalkers, but a couple of Zealots being added in. Shield battery actually still helping out on the top side. I think this will be a hold. Creator is really low on units, but Shin has such a large map to get across, and these Oracles still being alive. Little bits of Pulsar energy helping out here by killing a Ravager. That is huge. But another Immortal will bite the dust, a couple extra Stalkers, and finally, we can say the game is over. Behind all of that aggression, over the last 2 minutes, a Spire had completed, and 12 mutas are on the way. Shin might still not have a very good economy at all. 56 drones, guys. That's not very much. But he is going into surprise mutas, and 12 mutas might just ruin Creator's whole day. Shin knows that there's going to be a limited number of units in general. And whether or not they're very good at being anti-muta is another question, but regardless, there's not going to be a lot of them. But it looks like Creator was mindful of a Spire play. I even don't know where the Spire is. It's right there. He's actually never seen it, but it seems like he's mindful of it because he's producing another Phoenix. He is thinking, you know what would be really sucky right now? Is if this guy built mutas. And he's absolutely right about that. But the mutas might still overwhelm. One Archon really helping out here, but maybe not enough as the magic box comes in. More Phoenix are necessary. More Stalkers are necessary. A shield battery would have done wonders around that production, but it looks like with enough reinforcements, anything is possible. Finally, the mutas are pushed away, and now the Phoenix count can grow and be better positioned in the future. Creator will hold on. Good instinct right there. Why don't you have more units coming on the way? What could you be doing to really ruin my day? Mutas are always the answer to that. Mutas are DTs, and Zergs can't produce DTs. And now the mutas can even be chased down with the Phoenix control being perfect. It is difficult to control Phoenix perfectly, though. So Shin will have 6 mutas in his pocket to come by later, but he is moving back into Roach Ravager. He most importantly also moved back into droning. Added 20 more drones while the mutas were attacking, and now he's up to 78 on 4 bases, which is a lot better. Creator on 3 bases the entire time also did a good job keeping a lot of his probes alive during the fights, so only 13 went down. A little cockeyed on the gas income, though. 9, 10 drones? What the hell's happening? Oh, the Oracle. The Oracle went around to the 4th base and found it without a Spore Crawl. I think that Queen only just popped, too. So that Oracle to sacrifice itself to kill 12 drones. Not terrible. Now he is without an Oracle entirely now, and that's a little bit of a bummer. No Revelation for scouting, and no Stasis Traps, I would say, is really what's useful here, because scouting via Stasis Traps is very helpful. Whether or not they actually pop off in any army units. Definitely enough Phoenix to take care of the mutas, no problem. And when the mutas are taken care of, the Phoenix then do have the free reign of scouting, doing Overlord damage, catching some Queens, helping out against some of the Ravagers. That's the best thing they could pick up. So do not underestimate the power of these Phoenix here. I said in the previous game when it was a little more awkward that the Phoenix might not be that great. What was that? What other game was that? I don't remember. But in this case, I think they definitely were necessary. They definitely were very important. And they definitely can still help out here. An Observer is spotted, but nothing to reliably kill it. The Phoenix going to chase this anyway. Creator knows the attack is on the way, but oh, misrallied Immortals. That thing's a goner before it ever did anything important. That sucks. Archon is also away from the shield battery, I think, so that's not going to be as much as it would hope. Oh, the Banelings do still crash in on it. Tons of green going every which way as the Banelings try to crash in effectively. 10 probes go down. Stalker's holding the line, however, Phoenix helping out against those Ravagers, like I said. Excellent dodging of the Corrosive Biles, and this was just not the attack that Shin was hoping for. He got the great pick off on the first Immortal, and his second Immortal is also misrallied. Whoopsie-daisy. But this overall was clearly not it. Creator, knowing that he has a much more powerful army, continuing to give chase. He had +2 attack during that defense. The Phoenix were coming in so nicely, crowd controlling away those corrosive biles and getting those kills. And the reinforcements were rather steady. Creator has 4 bases, 55, well, he was at like 70 workers with tons of production. And Shin, now having a huge problem. Can't remax fast enough. Doesn't have that big of an economy, because his 70+ drone economy only happened recently and then was knocked down a peg thanks to that Oracle, so it was even more recent actually. He did not have time to build a huge bank. The Phoenix are once again on the harassment, harassing, killing units, and getting a lot of that scouting, really getting all the information and seeing and how there's really just not that big of a Zerg army being remade. He's probably feeling pretty freaking good about himself. He's like, that's still Baneling Roach Ravager. It's not completely maxed out again. And I am perfectly fine on 4 bases. Thank you very much. So this seems really good for Creator. He might just be advancing into the round of 8, giving ourselves a Protoss automatically in the GSL. It's always nice. It's always a bit of a concern. And Creator's job right now is just continue making sure that Shin is building the typical units. No quick attempt into a hive and Greater Spire that goes unscouted. Because if it is just the quantity of Zerg units that we see with Baneling Roach Ravager against the quality units of Zealots, Immortal, Archon. Well, and Storm, apparently. I think, yeah, Zerg's supposed to lose that battle. And Shin is still not on a huge economy. It'd be a little different if Shin was maxed out with 5,000, 2,000 in the bank, and then it's, you know, does he get exhausted in his attempts to break the Protoss, or does he actually break the Protoss? This is it. This is almost an all-in. I mean, this is getting even more all-in, actually, as we have harassments. Phoenix finding another base without a Spore Crawler means that drones are going down. The Phoenix don't help back at home, but I'm not sure they have to. Creator's army supply really close to the Zergs. Good news for a Protoss player who also has superior upgrades. Storms were not there from the beginning, however, and that's a little awkward, only coming in now after so many units are taken down. But there's still a lot of quality here in the Protoss army. Storm's not coming down here. Oh no, Archon was created. I mean, these are mistakes, man. These are mistakes that are really adding up. Creator had a really great army that if everything was put together correctly, I think this would be a no-chance situation for the Zerg. The Storm should have come down immediately. More units could have been saved if those Storms came down immediately. And then it's like no contest. Storms into Archon, Splash, and Immortal shots. No possible way that Shin was going to win that, but they got a little awkward. Fortunately, Creator was still in such a great position that he's able to defend and chase down the remaining units, and Shin does not have the bank to instantly remax. If he did, and there was all those mistakes there from Creator, and now there's a remax of Zerg coming at him, I'd be very, very scared. But it is a very slow remax from Shin, who is still only on these very basic units as well. There's no second threat that we have to worry about, that Creator has to worry about. 4 bases, still doing fine for Creator, although the first 3 for both players should be mining out soon. Actually, this third doing fine. Little run-by setup, hoping to distract as well. More avenues of attack opening up for Shin. He really does not have a second plan here. He's not trying to add on an Infestation Pit. Oh, he already has one. He's not trying to add on a Hive or Infestors. But he is just going into Baneling Roach Ravager over and over and over again. Hopefully this time around, Creator will have all of his army actually situated, although he is distracted successfully. As the Banelings crash into his 4th base, there are still some Lings ready for more Banelings and more run-bys. I think Creator, like, he saw the attack coming, but I think he thought he had High Templars elsewhere. That's why that one engagement went so awkward. All of his Storms are off to the right. There's another mineral walls too. Yeah, mixed base, okay. War Prism, taking advantage of the transit, I guess, from main base to main base. And, you know, Shin is actually quite far away at this point. A couple of Banelings are here, but that's not going to be enough if Creator is allowed to once again warp in. And by allowed, I mean if he thinks it's worth it compared to defending. Does he have enough to defend with all of this right here, right now? Not quite, perhaps. More army coming off the right side. Couple Storms did hit with this engagement this time, so it's a bit better than last. And all these Immortals are also living a very long time. Shield battery overcharge going through the entire battle meant the Immortals really lived up to its name. And Creator does hold defensively with his army and was continuing to harass the main base of Shin elsewhere. And that means the Creator is going to take the 2-1 victory, get revenge. The rematch curse is alive and well. And that means that Maru and Creator will be the first to move into the round of 8 of GSL.